Chapter 221 Pain Split. No, it's a violent meal. Little Mischievous. Youth. Pain Split. Qingwei calmly gave orders to Little Mischievous. Little Mischievous looked at the parasect that had just taken a bite of himself and just landed, his eyes gradually glowing red. Then, a long dark purple line gradually formed on the top of Little Mischievous' head, linking from Mischievous to parasect. Duoho. Parasect screamed, and Hiji could only see light green rays of light emerging from parasect's body, pouring into the body of Little Mischievous along this long dark purple line. Pain Split, a general variation skill, adds up the stamina of both Pokemon and divides them equally. This skill move, as long as the timing is good, is simply a magic trick. The Little Mischievous had gone through a battle before, and his stamina had been exhausted. In addition, he had eaten Parasect's first move, and Parasect's stamina was in full bloom. After this move, Pain Split, Parasect's two big white eyes were also slightly closed, revealing a slightly painful expression. Obviously, the process of losing physical strength is not so pleasant, and Little Mischievous was not very comfortable at this time. If she was asked to evaluate the effect of Pain Split, she would briefly describe the process in 4 words. Violent feeding. The one who draws physical strength doesn't feel well, but the one who accepts physical strength feels like being forcefully stuffed into it. Although it doesn't feel very good, the effect is real. Little Mischievous' condition is much better now than before. Parasect suck blood. Seeing that the former Deo was now pulled back to almost the same starting line by this move, Pain Split, Hiji couldn't help but feel a little anxious. Judging from this battle alone, now he has changed from a big superior to a micro superior, and the only thing that is superior is that Mischievous is still in a state of poisoning. Shadow Sneak tilde. After Hiji finished speaking, Qingwei's word came unhurriedly. Tilde. Little Mischievous nodded, blending into the shadow of Parasect just before he jumped up. Then, snap. Parasect was also slapped by his own shadow. At the same time, the blood-sucking skills also failed to release. Mischievous, keep using the shadow ball. Qingwei did not ask Mischievous to use the Psybeam, which might confuse the opponent, but chose the most powerful shadow ball attack. This is because, now Mischievous' whole card has been opened, plus the gap between her and the opponent, as Parasect's real first level strength, and the disadvantage that has already gone through a battle. In Qingwei's opinion, the current situation does not allow the Little Mischievous to continue to control and consume, so the only option is to burst out the strongest damage in a short period of time and reduce the opponent's bloodline. Gym Leader does not allow Pokemon to be replaced midway, unless its own Pokemon has a special skill such as U-turn, or the opponent's Pokemon has a skill such as forced replacement of Pokemon, and the challenger can change it at any time. Parasect, use Mushroom Spore. Duoho. Parasect quickly responded to Kazuhiro. Rustling. The big mushroom on his back gathers a lot of spores, and if it gets contaminated with these spores, he will fall asleep. At this time, Little Mischievous also rubbed the shadow ball and threw it toward Parasect. After that, it quickly started to avoid these spores. However, unlike leaf powder, when the mushroom spores are released, the spores are covered with a trace of Parasect energy. This makes the spores spread much faster than sleep powder. Although Little Mischievous tried his best to dodge, he was still infected with some flying spores. Well, Little Mischievous flew and hit Yan. A strong sense of drowsiness hit her, so she couldn't hold on for long, and then she slowly fell to the ground and fell into a state of sleep. Good Chan. Parasect, use Vampire. Duoho. Parasect let out a cry, moved his legs quickly, came to Mischievous' side with the fastest speed in his life, and took a bite. Qingwei hesitated for a while, but did not stop. In fact, at this point, the defeat of Little Mischievous has become a foregone conclusion. It stands to reason that Qingwei can take the initiative to admit defeat and end the battle, which can also make Little Mischievous suffer less damage. But the key is that the skill that Kazuhime Parasect uses, blood sucking. This skill move can not only deal damage, but also restore its own physical strength. If Qingwei directly admits defeat, Parasect's physical strength will be less. In the next battle, although Qingwei believes that this physical strength will not change the result in the slightest, but if the other party seizes this point and doesn't let go, then Qingwei has nothing to say. Therefore, for a fair battle result, Qingwei did not admit defeat, but only after seeing that after Parasect finished using his move, Little Mischievous' state became poor, he said, "I admit defeat in this game." Saying that, Qingwei took out the Pokeball and put the Little Mischievous in it. If there is a health display at this time, although the Little Mischievous has no blood volume cleared to 0, his own blood volume should also be in single digit. In this case, even if the opponent uses another blood-sucking move, they will not be able to absorb any physical strength. The second battle is won by the challenger Kazuhiro and his Parasect. Next, ask leader Qingwei to send the next Pokemon. The national character face immediately announced the results of the competition. Seeing Qingwei voluntarily admit defeat, Hiji didn't say much. Although he was a newcomer, he could still see this situation. On the battlefield, both sides have the right to admit defeat at any time, so even if Qingwei just admitted defeat before Parasect uses blood sucking, it stands to reason that he can't say anything more. However, Qingwei still conceded defeat after recovering some physical strength from his Parasect. This alone has made his perception of Qingwei invisibly improved a lot, although his perception is of no use to Qingwei at all. Qingwei didn't have any ink marks either, so he took out another Pokeball directly from his waist, enlarged it, and threw it onto the field. With a flash of red light, a big snow-white fox appeared in the battle. Batilda Double Ninetales, who came out of the Pokeball, shook his tail, stretched his body, and then looked at his opponent in the first battle, Parasect. It just. Chapter 222. Does the difference in region also affect attribute restraint? Kazuhi looked at the Pokemon in front of him and felt very familiar, but he just didn't know. After all, he is only a child born and raised in Kanto region. Although he was born in a big city like Saffron City and his family background is relatively good, his knowledge of Pokemon is limited to the Pokemon of Kanto and Johto. Like a Pokemon from as far away as Alola, he's scratching his head. So Kazuhi took the Pokédex out of his pocket, ready to see what it was. When scanning to Ninetales, Pudgy's Pokédex quickly gave his answer dumbly. Ninetales, Alola's appearance. The Fa Pokemon is a person with ice attribute, mild personality, and sometimes killed by helping hand. Alola's Ninetales. Kazuhi also reacted. No wonder this Pokemon looked familiar. This look is so similar to Kanto region's Ninetales. Yes, these are Ninetales in Alola region form, but I like to call them Ice Ninetales. At this time, Qingwei also took the initiative to explain. Ice Ninetales, a fitting title. Kazuhi thought of the ice attribute of this Ninetales and nodded. If both sides are ready, the third battle will begin. Guozian saw that Pudgy almost knew Pokemon, so he said. Hearing that, Kazuhi nodded his head to indicate that he was okay. Then, the third battle, 3, 2, 1, begin. The national character face announced the start, and Qingwei quietly waited for Pudgy to issue an order. He is not in a hurry now. After all, Ice Ninetales is quite restrained for Parasect. In addition, Parasect was also consumed a lot by the little mischievous. For the current situation, Qingwei felt that he only needed F2A to win. 177 Pudgy was a little tangled. He still knew very well about attribute restraint. After learning about the attributes of this Ninetales, his heart sank. This leader does not be Koichi. I am a man who wants to become a master of all attribute, not a man who wants to become a master of reverse attribute. Pudgy just wanted to ask if Qingwei made a mistake, but in the end, this question could not be said, but silently issued the first command. Parasect, use mushroom spores. Since the mushroom spores have just been very effective against the little mischievous, let's remake it now. Are you still thinking about the old routine? When Qingwei saw it, he was delighted. Mushroom spores are indeed difficult for little mischievous to deal with, but for Ice Ninetales, Icy Ninetales, Icy Wind, blow these spores away, Qingwei said relaxedly. Batilda. The Ninetales of Ice Ninetales spread out, shaking slightly in the air, and with the shaking of the tail, a cold wind blew toward the field. Parasect were blown away directly by the cold wind. With Icy Wind in hand, Ice Ninetales is not afraid of skill moves such as 3 powders and spores, and Icy Wind not only blows away the spores, but also damages Parasect along the way. Ice Ninetales, use Nasty Plot. Seeing that Icy Wind worked well, Qingwei decided not to drag it on, end the fight early and go back early to restore little mischievous. But, hearing Qingwei's order, Ice Ninetales called out, and her blue eyes began to glow. Nasty Plot, you can improve your special attack in a short time. BJEA. Parasect, take this opportunity to go up and use blood sucking. Seeing that he couldn't stop him, Pudgy could only seize the time to let Parasect cause damage to Ice Ninetales, and at the same time restore his own physical strength so as to deal with the opponent's attack in the future. Just when Bing Ninetales added a buff to himself, Parasect also came to Bing Ninetales' side and bit down on Bing Ninetales' forelimb. However, Kazuhi was keenly aware that this time, the green light sucked out of the Ice Ninetales was much less than when he was against the little mischievous before. The scene in front of me is beyond Kazuhi's cognition. Why is Parasect's insect-type skill move so bad for Ice Ninetales? Shouldn't it be a different region? The attribute restraint has changed. At this moment, this thought even popped up in Kazuhiro's mind. It stands to reason that although the ice element restrains his Parasect, if his Parasect's grass and insect double-type skills hit the ice element, he will not be resisted. But now this blood-sucking effect is obviously resisted by the opponent. Away from the big spectrum, Qingwei also saw this scene and snickered secretly. Ice-type definitely won't resist insect-type skills, but Fairy-type will resist. This is good. With this combat test, he no longer has to think about how to announce the Fairy attribute of Ice Ninetales. However, Qingwei did not say it directly now, but continued to give instructions. Ice Ninetales, Aurora Beam. But Bing Ninetales looked down at Parasect, who was biting his forelimbs and kept his mouth open. Immediately afterward, a dark blue light bit out from her mouth and hit Parasect in an instant. Duoho. The Parasect hit by the Aurora Beam was directly knocked out, and after rolling on the ground for a few laps, it lay on the ground and did not move. There is a nasty plot. Increase special attack, plus the addition of Ice Ninetales' own ice system to the ice attribute skills, plus the double restraint of Parasect, plus Parasect's state at this time is already dissatisfied. Nasty plot increases the special attack level by 2, which is 2.25 times the original. The skill bonus of the ice type is 1.5 times, and the power of Aurora Beam is 65. It directly caused Parasect to lose its combat ability. Parasect, stand up. Haji looked at Parasect and wanted to start the rejuvenation roar, but after roaring for a long time, Parasect remained motionless. Obviously, his rejuvenation roar skills are not at home. Parasect loses combat. Ice Ninetales win. Gucci Face waited for a while, but Parasect still couldn't stand up, so he announced, Leader Qingwei won this game. Challenger Kazuhi. The challenge failed. After speaking, Guozi's face turned to look at Qingwei. Did you fail? Haji lowered his head when he heard the official announcement of the national character fate. He was convincing to lose this game, although he still doesn't understand why Parasect's blood-sucking effect on Ice Ninetales didn't have the desired effect. It didn't affect the overall situation. If it wasn't for Misdreavus playing his Ivysaur many times at the beginning, and then the huge consumption of Parasect through Pain Split, his Parasect would not have suffered the point of knocking GG with one blow from Ice Ninetales. Moreover, Qingwei even let his Parasect absorb Misdreavus' physical strength before admitting defeat. From this point of view, he has lost his temper. I lost this time. I will challenge again when I train stronger. Kazuhi put away the Parasect with the Pokeball, bowed his head and said something, then turned around and prepared to leave. Wait, Qingwei's voice came from behind him. Haji turned around and saw Qingwei bringing Bing Ninetales towards him. When he came to him, he saw Qingwei took out a badge from his pocket and handed it over. This is your badge. Didn't I lose? And I lost so badly. Haji didn't answer, but raised his head and asked, who said you can't get the badge if you lose? Qingwei smiled and said, although you lost this battle, as long as you can show your bright spots in the battle, the leader can decide whether to award you a badge. Although Haji initially gave Qingwei a different impression grade. For example, there are all kinds of bragging on the registration form, and there are some problems with the command at the beginning of the battle. But in the overall battle, like when Ivysaur was chaotic at the beginning, his concern for Ivysaur was not fake. After Parasect finally lost his combat effectiveness, those worries on his face were not fake. In addition, after killing Ivysaur after the little Misdreavus was poisoned, he didn't think about delaying the time to make Misdreavus consume more stamina, but quickly sent a second Pokemon to start the battle. Although there is a lot of talk off the court, when it comes to the battlefield, this Haji is still very serious. This is also the biggest reason for Qingwei to change his attitude. It doesn't matter if you talk big, who is young, who is not a middle schooler, and Haji's strength is not bad, a superior level Pokemon, a senior level Pokemon, so it seems that he must have other Pokemon. The strength is about the same level. If Giovanni is still sitting here, he relies on his restraint on the ground-based Pokemon. If Giovanni is in a better mood, he really has a good chance of winning. Although the command ability is a bit poor, there is still room for improvement. Right. The national character face also came over at this time, and made a statement to confirm that what Qingwei said was right. Haji actually knows this rule. If he loses, there is still a certain possibility of getting the badge, but he thinks that in the battle just now, he was a fiasco, so he thinks that he has temporarily missed the badge. Thank you, Qingwei. Haji stretched out his hand, took the badge that Qingwei handed over, and watched it for a while. The color of the entire badge was emerald green, and it looked like a plant, resembling asparagus or wheat ear. Then he took out a box from his backpack, put the badge in it solemnly, and then raised his head to thank Qingwei. No thanks. Qingwei waved his hand and continued, your Pokemon's strength is good, but your commanding ability is a bit poor. Next, you need to pay attention to this point, otherwise you will not be able to fully utilize your Pokemon's strength in the future. Command ability. Haji nodded and humbly accepted Qingwei's suggestion. I see. I will work hard to improve myself. Well, Chapter 223 Dragonite. This is boxing. Isn't it a massager? Qingwei nodded. He gave advice just now, but he just learned from other gym leaders and fulfilled his responsibilities as a leader. As a leader, he is not only a tool person who is challenged by others. After the battle, the leader can also put forward his own opinions and suggestions. However, in many cases, it is the challenger who wins, which makes many of the suggestions made by the leader are ignored by these challengers. After all, in the eyes of some challengers, what's a good suggestion from a loser? This also leads to overtime. Some leaders are too lazy to put forward their own suggestions. Anyway, no one will listen to them. Are they leaders? Hey, tool man for issuing badges. However, when Qingwei first arrived, he still put forward his own suggestions conscientiously. Haji also readily accepted it. After all, they lost so badly. The contrast between the two sides is obvious. If I have nothing to do, I will go to the training room first. Someone is coming. Call me over there. At this time, Qingwei said to the face of the national character beside him, and was about to leave. Wait a minute. At this time, it was Huji's turn to stop Qingwei. Qingwei turned his head. I have another question. Say, then, during the previous battle, why did my parasect not use blood-sucking on Ice Ninetales? The effect didn't seem to be good. Did the region on Alola's side cause the attribute restraint to change? This question has been holding him back for a long time, and he really can't figure it out. Qingwei didn't expect that the other party would think so much, and even thought that some attribute restraint had changed. Isn't this outrageous? So he organized a language and said, attribute restraint will not be affected by region. As for why Ice Ninetales resist blood-sucking, my guess is that Ice Ninetales itself has another attribute, but some research is needed. There is another attribute. Qingwei's words made Huji stunned for a moment. The matter of studying Pokemon attributes is still too far away for him. After all, since he was born, basically the attributes of Pokemon have been researched and fixed by various researchers. Understand? Except Qingwei's newly discovered fairy series, and he only needs to read books and surf the internet to learn the related Pokemon and restraint of these attributes. If he thinks about it this way, the gap between him and Qingwei in front of him is really not small. Thank you for your answer. Then I'll leave first. After Huji thanked Qingwei, he turned around and left the battlefield thoughtfully. Obviously, at this point he was thinking about what another attribute of Ice Ninetales might be, but the worm attribute is too many to be resisted by other attributes as an attacker. After thinking about it for a long time, he just ruled out the options of flying and fire. Then I'll go back to the training room first, and call me there when the next challenger arrives. Qingwei said a word to Gujiface, then took the Ice Ninetales away from the battlefield and returned to the training room. As soon as he entered the door, he glanced lightly to the left, and the sight in front of him shocked him. Only see, Dragonite didn't know when to leave that dodgeball training and came to the place where Charizard trained his fighting ability yesterday. Then, he was lying in the middle of the pile of gloves, and the gloves did not know when they were activated, and it was not only one that was activated yesterday. I don't know who it is, and directly activated 3 gloves. Now the 3 gloves are taking turns to bomb the Dragonite lying down, and Dragonite's face showed a comfortable expression, as if the attack of the glove was like a massage to him. Boom tilde. This massager is so comfortable to massage. Qingwei was also stunned for a moment. What a dangerous training device for Charizard, but a large massager for Dragonite. But if you think about it carefully, it seems normal. After all, Dragonite's strength is at the top of the Pokemon world. Boom tilde boom. Just at this moment, Dragonite, who was enjoying the massage, turned his head and saw Qingwei, who pushed in the door. Then, he was so frightened that he jumped from the ground and stood up. Then, Dragonite quickly came to Qingwei and began to explain, saying that it wasn't his intention. He just wanted to use this for training, but he didn't expect it to be so comfortable. As for Flowers, Zero Charizard, who was training while he was training, wanted to hit him. I'll be cleaning you up in a while. After Qingwei said a word, he called Blossom and Melodic over, and at the same time released the Little Mischievous for them to treat. Then he released Sylveon to give Little Mischievous a heal bell to dispel her own poison state. Under grassy terrain and Life Dew's helping hand, Little Mischievous quickly returned to health. Well tilde. The Little Mischievous, who had recovered, began to circle Qingwei back and forth again, which was also a way for her to express her happiness. Now it's time for us to talk carefully. Seeing that the Little Mischievous was alright, Qingwei turned his head to the Dragonite who was on the side. Tell me, how long have you been slack off? Didn't you keep losing weight in that dodgeball? Boom. Mount Silver Alliance headquarters, next to the Nurturers Association headquarters. In a spacious conference room, a circle of old men and old ladies sat. These people are all high-level cultivators of the association. Of course, each of them is a senior cultivator. It can be said that in the Alliance, no one wants to let one of these old men and old ladies helping hand customize the cultivation plan of Pokemon in their hand. It's just that because of their age, they don't take orders very much anymore, and they just huddle in the headquarters of the Nurturing Association and do research. Otherwise, even if this is empty silver, the gate of the association's headquarters will probably be stepped on by people coming from next door. In another 2 months, the Pokemon appraisal test will take place, and we have to get busy again. An old man sitting at the top looked at the crowd and said slowly, just take the test. What does it have to do with the old man? President, tell me if you have something to do. I still have research in hand waiting for me to go back. A shorter old man said, who will be in charge of this year? Do you have any self-recommendation? The president heard someone say this without ink and asked directly looking around. But, as soon as his voice fell, the surroundings immediately fell silent. Howl. Chapter 224 _ Is there a lottery without cheating? The old men and the old ladies who were arguing about uproar turned their heads one by one and didn't look at the president, as if they were avoiding some play. Look at you. I just said that I have something to say, and now I said it. How about you? The president saw that his words were ignored, and slapped the table. Every year, 2 people are responsible for the Pokemon appraisal test, and this matter still needs to be. Are you hiding? After speaking, the president began to call his name. Old master, you come to be the person in charge. The first thing the president called was a relatively tall, but very thin old man. Hearing being named by the president, the old man called Laozong quickly waved his hand. I can't. You know that my recent research has just reached a critical period, and I can't leave for more than a month. You should change it. 1. Old item. The president looked at an old man sitting opposite the old master again. I'm not good at that, and you know that. The old man seemed to be a little taciturn. After the president asked for a while, he spoke slowly. Mother-in-law. Immediately afterward, the president looked at an old woman who was sitting beside the short old man before. Lao Shen has received several orders recently, and it's almost time for delivery. 177. I don't have time. As a result, the answer was unequivocal. Next, the president named a few more people's names, but people are always rejected for various reasons. Some are doing research to a critical moment, some are taking orders, some are planning to go out to collect data, and some are even unwell. In short, for the president's ass, these people seem to be avoiding the plague god. However, since he can become the president of the Kanto Region Nurturers Association and sit on the top spot at the MT Silver headquarters, how could the president admit defeat so easily? Hey, I knew you guys would do this with disrespectful old men. Fortunately, I was prepared. After speaking, the president brought a pen holder-like container from under the table and put it on the table. What is this? An old man asked. Since everyone is unwilling to be the person in charge of this Pokemon appraisal test, then we will take the fairest method and draw lot. The president said, picked up the pen holder and shook it, and there was the sound of papers rubbing against each other. There are slips of paper corresponding to the number of us, most of which are white, but there are 2 slips, one with the main person in charge, and the other with auxiliary. The person who draws the main person in charge is the main person in charge of this Pokemon appraisal test, and the assistants are here to assist the main person in charge. It's there to draw lot. You should have no doubt, right? Who knows if you've made a fool of yourself? What if the number of notes doesn't match the number of us? It's not like you haven't done this kind of thing before. That's right, we arrested you on the spot for cheating in the draw last time. At this time, the voice of questioning came from below. Obviously, this president has also cheated before. It seems that the nature of this guild leader is on the same level as these old men and women below. They are the type of people who are keen on research but not very interested in various tasks and activity. I didn't cheat this time. If you don't believe me, see. Obviously, what he said just now hit the chairman's sore spot, and he saw that the chairman poured out all the notes in the pen holder and spread it out in front of him. Each piece of paper was folded so tightly that it was impossible to tell from the outside whether there was any writing on the inside, and the number was the same as the number of people in the conference room at this time. Have you seen it? This time is absolutely fair and fair. As the president said, he put the notes in the pen holder again, and put the pen holder on the table again. Then we are still the old rules. You draw first and save the last one. Wait, just when the president was halfway through speaking, he was interrupted by someone he called Laozong before. What? Laozong stood up, looked at the pen holder and said slowly, it's always been like this in the past, but you haven't won a single mission. I feel there is something wrong. That's my luck. Who doesn't know I'm? The president retorted. Che, are you lucky? If you are lucky, you won't have so many explosions inexplicably in your research. Before the president's words were finished, he was interrupted again. The bad luck of the president in the research is a well-known thing among the old men and the old lady. Every time a research comes to a critical juncture, there are no problems with the steps and ingredients of the raw materials, but there will always be an inexplicable explosion when the synthesis is critical. Sometimes a good machine suddenly has a problem, and sometimes it is simply not known why. But the same step, the same raw materials and ingredient, if someone else operates it, there is no such problem, and the machines are running well. Therefore, the title of Unfortunate President has long been spread in the headquarters of the Nurturers Association, especially among the top executive. However, the strange thing is that every time they used to draw lot to assign tasks, the president was always lucky to get the option that was not used. Although there are so many old men and women, only 2 or 3 people are needed to carry out the task at a time, and most of them will draw a white lottery. But after so many years, these old men have almost all taken turn, and some of them have even been unlucky to take charge of multiple tasks. Only the president is the only one who has never completed a single task. At first, others could understand it, but later, the old men also began to suspect, but there was no evidence. So there is this scene that is questioned today. Then tell me how to draw lot. The president asked. Well, in the past, you were the last to draw. This time you are the first to draw. The old man thought for a while and said, no, it's too simple. If he's a ghost, he can still do it. As soon as Laozong finished speaking, he was interrupted by others. That's right. The first and the last are not very good. I have a proposal. Let's draw lots according to Age. According to the order of age, the older ones will be drawn first. How about? At this time, someone proposed. Well, it sounds like it's not bad, so be it. This proposal was widely recognized by the old men and women, because they only know the approximate ages of some people. If they are more careful, they don't know who is older and who is younger. After all, everyone gets along with each other on weekdays, and everyone is basically the same generation. In addition, for various researches, they often chat and quarrel. At this time, if you put your age, it will not work. Just when someone made this opinion, no one saw the corner of the president's mouth. There was such a slight change. Then let draw lots according to the age. Now, let's all report the age. If the age is the same, the month is the same, and the month is the same as the date. The chairman saw that everyone agreed, so he got up and said, although the tone was still it's very calm, but everyone here always feels that the current president seems to be lacking in confidence. Oh, old guy, have you leaked the bottom? Seeing the president's appearance, the old men and the old ladies sneered in their heart. Just Ning's mildewed physique, but he hasn't given a mission for so many years. Isn't this outrageous? All right now, according to this mildewed physique, isn't this mission a definite certainty? Regarding the ratio of age, it will soon be over. This time it has nothing to do with everyone's seats before. The oldest is an old woman with deep wrinkles on her face. The order of the president's drawing of lots is in the middle of the first position. After the lottery order was determined, everyone looked at the president, and some people sneered directly. Old man, how do you hide now? Countless people thought so. Since the order has been decided, let's start drawing lot. The first mother-in-law Lee. The president held the pen holder and was about to walk in front of Granny Lee, but at this time someone stabbed him again. President, don't bother, you so tired. Give us the pen holder. We will pass it on to you, and you will stay where you are. Just it. Yo, old Shang is smart. Well said. We can just pass it on to each other. There are people in the province who are doing shit on the road. When everyone heard this, they began to respond. When the president saw it, wasn't he talking about the old guy whom he named at the beginning and finally called him not good at socializing? Okay, Mr. Shang, I usually see you being taciturn, but I didn't expect you to have accumulated a belly of bad water for so many years. The president immediately began to sneer. 4.0 and Lao Shang is not to be outdone. It's okay. It's okay. Compared to some of us, I'm just like a little white flower in the mountain. Huh. The president snorted, but didn't say much, but pushed the pen holder in his hand forward, signaling them to start delivering. After a few minutes, everyone was faced with a folded note. Then now, let's open it up and take a look. As the president said, he took the lead in opening the note in his hand, just glanced at it, and put the note on the table. The few who were closer to him also took the opportunity to glance at them, but found that the paper is blank. In other words, the mission this time is still not the responsibility of the president. Why me? I don't want to go. Not long after, there were two wailing sounds from the next song. One of them didn't speak much before and was a fat little old man, while the other was the little old man who had been more active before. Hearing the mourning of these two people, everyone looked at them one after another, only to see the main person in charge written on the paper in front of the little old man, while the word auxiliary were written on the paper of the fat old man. HMPH. There's nothing to say now, right? Chapter 225 _ you guys are still too young. At this time, the corner of the president's mouth rose unconsciously. Lao Lian, Lao Huo. This time the Pokemon appraisal test will be fully handed over to the two of you. Afterward, the two of you can discuss how to prepare, and the association will give you the green light all the way. Quote, okay, this is the content of this meeting. If you have nothing to do now, let's go to work separately. It's really bad luck. It's scattered. Lao Lian, the chubby old man who was drawn as an assistant, stood up and said, and took the lead out of the conference room after speaking. Oh, you two guys are really not up to your expectations. The other old men and ladies also got up one after another and left the conference room in twos and threes. In the end, only the chairman was left in the seat. Looking at the note they dropped on the conference table, the corners of the president's mouth rose more and more. Ha 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 ha. In the end, he still couldn't hold back and laughed outright. At the same time, he touched pocket 19 with his hand and found two notes that were the same as when the lottery was drawn but had not been opened. Old guys, play with me, you are still young. While talking to himself, the president opened two slips of paper, which were all blank, thinking that changing the rules will affect me. Age. Oh, I expected it. The chairman slowly stood up and walked around the conference table, putting away the notes on the table as he walked. In the past draws, he was indeed the last one, so it was easy to cheat. He only needed to jam a note inside the pen holder. In the end, this note was his. Today, although these old guys are a bit smarter than before, they still haven't been able to escape from his palm. He has already predicted the predictions of the old guys. In the beginning, all he filled in the pen holder were blank slips of paper, and when he poured it out to show everyone the correct amount, when he took it back, he secretly hid two notes and didn't put them back. After that, everyone proposed to draw according to age, and it was his turn. turn. When he reached in, he was holding 2 slips of paper with words on it. Of course, what he took out was bound to be a white note. Therefore, those who are older than him must draw a blank note this time, and those who are younger than him will die. The results also saw that this time, the president still won the drawing war victory. Ha 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 ha. After the president put away all the notes, he suddenly sighed. These old guys are really getting more and more difficult to fool. This time the backhand has been used, and next time I have to think about a whole card. Quote, well, do you want to make a special lottery box next time? Or, while thinking about how to cheat next time, the chairman walked out of the conference room and closed the door of the conference room. It is estimated that in the entire Nurturing Association, except for a few elderly people outside, no one knows that the high-level executives of the entire association are actually such a bunch of lazy people who are disrespectful to the old. What outsiders don't know is that at the beginning of the Nurturing Home Association, almost all aspects of operation, personnel, recruitment and other issues were carried out with the assistance of the Alliance. In addition to scientific research, these old people are also scientific research. As for the affairs of the association, they have always pushed it as they can, but if they really can't push it, they will settle it in a hurry. Now that the overall framework of the association has basically taken shape, even if they usually do all kinds of things in business, they can have people who are specially responsible for administration to handle these affairs. It's just that once they encounter a major event, they still need to send 1 or 2 people to take charge. After all, they are the highest level. The old men and the old ladies left the conference room. After a group of people made fun of the unfortunate two, they said a few bad words about the president together, and then they just dispersed. In their respective laboratory, there are still projects to be researched waiting for them, except for Lao Huo and Lao Lian. The 2 old men, who were about the same height but were 2 extremes in size, looked at each other and sighed at the same time. Come on, come and talk to me. Come on. The 2 looked at each other with a simple look, and they understood what the other wanted to say. Then, they came to Huo Lao, the thin old man's office together. Are we still the same as before? Elder Lian asked as soon as he sat down. I don't know. Find someone to come over and ask. It seems that it's time to update the question bank again. Huo Lao shook his head and used the communicator to make a call. It didn't take long for the door of the office to be knocked. Come in directly. As the door opened, a middle-aged man walked in. We are in charge of this year's Pokemon appraisal test. Is it time to update the question bank again? Huo Lao asked as soon as the middle-aged man came in. Yes, Huo Lao, it should have been updated last year, but Jun Lao said that it's okay to wait another year, and this year must be updated. The middle-aged man is quite familiar with this matter, and he has been in charge of cultivating family members before. The implementation of the various actions of the annual Pokemon appraisal test on the association headquarters side, and what they call the question bank, is better understood. The research of the Cultivator Association and the Alliance is improving every year. Some previous questions are a bit outdated now, and some questions are not, become less applicable, so every certain time, the question bank must be updated. For last year's questions, we have tried our best to find suitable questions from the existing question bank. If this is the case this year, the overlap between the questions and last year will be too high. The middle-aged man briefly explained the current status of the question bank. Then let's update it. If I remember correctly, each senior cultivator in the book is required to write their own question. Huo Lao nodded and continued to ask. Yes, in the past, every senior cultivator was required to provide a certain amount of questions, and after communicating with the Alliance, there would also be a certain amount of questions provided there. But, the middle-aged man said, and hesitated again. But what? Huo Lao asked. But in the past, to update the question bank, we will issue corresponding instructions to senior cultivators very early, and we have to screen the questions in the future. Not too short. We are a little short on time now. Quote, Chapter 226 What happens when the tester is the test taker? Middle-aged people have spoken out about the difficulties they are facing now. Isn't it enough to increase the manpower? Increase the number of manpower so that the follow-up work progress can be faster. When Huo Lao heard this, he was very puzzled. Isn't this a very simple thing? The screening staff of the question bank requires a lot of experience. If we temporarily increase the number of people, not only will it not increase our efficiency, but it will reduce our efficiency. Middle-aged people are very helpless. These old people really don't pay attention to anything in order to study. That's it. Increase the speed of questioning. At this time, Elder Lian, who had been sitting without speaking, said, in the past, didn't we just ask the senior trainers to give questions, but now the range of questions has been expanded to intermediate trainers, reducing the number of questions for each person, then shorten the time it takes for them to submit questions, so our screeners have more time to pick questions as well. Intermediate trainer, is this suitable? The middle-aged man was still a little hesitant. Why is it inappropriate? I ask you, who are most of the people who take the Pokemon identification test? Elder Lian asked. Most of them are rookie trainers who haven't been able to collect all the gym badges. Some trainers who have collected badges will also come to participate. In addition, some students from the Pokemon school will participate. The middle-aged man replied without any hesitation that he was already very familiar with the annual exam crowd. That's enough. Most of them are newcomers. Isn't the knowledge storage and ability of an intermediate cultivator not enough to deal with each other? Elder Lien continued. Now the middle-aged people have nothing to say. It stands to reason that the knowledge of the new rookie trainers who debut every year is as good as the intermediate trainers. But the middle-aged man felt as if he had missed something. Just when the middle-aged man was still hesitating, Huo Lao said, Lao Lian's method is good. Let's do it like this, and start to notify the cultivators of the information tomorrow. If the other party is not in Kanto at this time, just do it. There is no need to notify for the time being. This time so many people have asked questions, and it will take almost 2 or 3 years to deal with the question. Quote, but the middle-aged man wanted to say that every time he updated the question bank, he had to go there for about 5 years, but the quick-tempered old man didn't give him a chance to speak at all. Huo Lao waved his hand directly. I know what you want to say. This time just do as I said, and I will be responsible for everything. Then, well, that's it. Go ahead and do your work first. Just come over and let me know if you have something to do. Elder Huo said, his eyes drifting to the door of the laboratory behind him. Then I'll go back to study first. It's really unfortunate. The study is at a critical time, and the result is bad luck. Bad luck tilde. Elder Lien also stood up and said when he saw that the discussion was almost over. After that, he left Huo Lao's office first. Then I'm going to sort out the list first, the middle-aged man said, and also left the office. When the two left, Huo Lao couldn't wait to get up and came to the door of the research room, opened the door and walked in. The middle-aged man who returned to his office immediately turned on his computer and called up a list. He needs to send people to contact the notification one by one according to the names on this list. But while sorting out the list, he saw a familiar name, which reminded him of something he had missed before. Damn, this year is not quite right. Someone is messing in. No way. The middle-aged man could only get up, came to the door of Huo Lao's office again, and knocked on the door. But no one cares about him at all. Knocked on the door for a long time, and even rang the doorbell next to the door, but got no response. In desperation, the middle-aged man could only come to old Lian's office door again and start knocking on the door. Dong dong dong. Come in. This time, he quickly got a response. The middle-aged man pushed open the door, just in time to see Elder Lien wearing a white lab coat, holding a stack of paper documents in his hand, sitting at his desk and studying seriously. What the matter? Seeing that it was the middle-aged man who was talking with them, Elder Lien temporarily put down the information in his hand and asked, I just knocked on old Huo's door, but there was no response there. Maybe I have something to do, so I can only come to you. The middle-aged man said, that old guy must be in his laboratory. Lao Lien shook her head. I also rang the doorbell and got no reply. Middle-aged people are puzzled. Like these high-level offices, everyone's doorbell is connected to the research room. This is also to prevent people from searching for results in the research room but can't find it. Doorbell. As far as I know, that old thing has cut off the connection of the doorbell, right? When you ring the doorbell, you can only hear the doorbell ring twice outside the door, but you can't hear it in the research room at all. Old Lien pouted and explained. Besides him, there are several old guys who have done the same. The middle-aged man was speechless. Tell me what the matter. Well, when I was sorting out the list to be notified, I found a name. He is a person who passed the intermediate cultivator exam only this year. The middle-aged man said. Newcomer. Newcomers should also be notified. After all, they have passed the assessment, so there is no problem. Elder Lien was very puzzled. He's Qingwei. Who? Qingwei, this year's rookie trainer, the discoverer of the fairy system. Hearing the middle-aged man say this, Elder Lien also remembered that after the Qingwei assessment was over, a group of them held a special meeting. Although several months have passed, he still comes to mind when the name is mentioned. Qingwei. It's okay, since he is an intermediate cultivator, let him also participate in the questioning. Old Lien said. However, Qingwei may also take part in this year's Pokemon appraisal test. Is it appropriate for him to ask questions? The middle-aged man expressed his doubt. Well, there's nothing inappropriate. So many people ask questions. How many questions can one person ask? How many questions can be selected for the exam? When Elder Lien heard the word, he laughed and said, take 10,000 step back and say that even if his question is chosen, it is because his own ability is strong enough. How can such a person not be able to write questions on the premise of taking the test? As long as someone is in Kanto, all the people who need to be notified will be notified. Okay, I see. Well, I'll go to the old guy, Lao Huo, and find someone to fix the doorbell of his laboratory. After that, you can contact him directly if you have anything else. I'm just an assistant. He is the main person in charge. If you have something to do, find him first. Elder Lien waved his hand. Obviously, this is also going to chase people. Well, you're busy. There was a wry smile on the corner of the middle-aged man's mouth. As he spoke, he took the initiative to leave Lao Lian's office. After returning to his office, he quickly subdivided the list based on the existing list, and then began to dial a newsletter. I will pass the list to you in a while, and you can start contacting according to your respective tasks. This year, it is per person. Ask at least 5 questions. Quote, well, that's it. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions, and hang up first. Qingwei, of course, had no idea about this. At this time, he was fighting against the third challenger on the battlefield. After the first challenger and Kai left with the Viridian badge, the second and third challengers soon came to the door, and the battle for the second challenger ended quickly. Although it was a 3v3, Qingwei just used a Pokemon from Melodic, and picked a senior level Pokemon and a superior level Pokemon. After that, although Melodic failed in the third game due to physical problems, the Ice Ninetales who appeared in the fourth game still won the battle relatively easily. After the whole battle, in Qingwei's eyes, the opponent did not have the slightest bright spot, which was far worse than the trainer named Huji at the beginning. Moreover, this is also a trainer who challenged Sick Gym and got Sick badges. Qingwei was very disappointed by this result, so in the end, he just asked the other party a lot of questions about the other party himself, and did not give the badge to the other party. Although the Pokemon sent by the other party are stronger than Hiji, 1 senior and 2 superior, Qingwei's eyesight is not easy to fool. Get Zhao Zhao. The strength of the opponent's Charmeleon has reached the superior level, but it is easy to see that the opponent has just reached this level. The other one, the Persian who defeated Melodic, although it is considered to be very strong at the superior level, but from the appearance alone, Qingwei can tell that this Persian is not too young. Moreover, the tacit understanding between this Persian and this trainer is not very good. Often, Persian has his own fighting thinking, which is a little different from the instructions given by the other side. According to Qingwei's guess, this Persian is likely to be the Pokemon of an elder in their family. Judging from Persian's combat performance, the opponent was obviously trained by a trainer, but his tacit understanding with this person was not very good. It was normal for Qingwei to have such guesses. Fighting with a Pokemon that doesn't belong to you, and it is a gym challenge, such a trainer, Qingwei can see a ghost. So in the last match, Qingwei pointed out a lot of flaws in the opponent's body in a very stern tone after the battle. Some of them are very small. In fact, Qingwei pointed out the aspect that don't need to be too concerned at all. The other party who said directly has nothing to say, and hides his face and escapes the publication. And the trainer who was currently fighting against Qingwei watched the entire battle between Qingwei and the previous one. After reading it, he almost urinated. Chapter 227 Gym Challenger with uneven strength. Nimas are all the same age. Why are you so good and powerful? And what Qingwei said to the other party after the battle. He thought about it carefully. It seems that he has a lot of them. No, it should be said that most of them. Thinking of this person wanted to run away at the time. This challenge was too terrifying. Let's leave it as the last gym here, or just find a small town gym instead. However, at this time his predecessor had already fled, and Qingwei called out to him as a matter of course. Qingwei's voice seemed to release mean look to him, making him unable to move. So, in this situation, Qingwei and the opponent started a battle. Then, Qingwei is just getting more and more strained. This person's Pokemon look pretty good, and if they fight, the opponent's Pokemon and the other party's commander also have a slight inconsistency. However, this inconsistency is no different from the previous one with Persian. This commander, sometimes Pokemon can comprehend it with just one look, and execute it quickly, but at this time, this commander will often ask Pokemon to change the action plan. It's like a Tangle patient is fighting. The issuance of orders is always full of hesitation. This made 177 Qingwei a little confused, and I don't know why this happened. In particular, this person's Pokemon cultivation is also quite good. He has obtained 5 badges, and Pokemon are also cultivated by himself. In terms of command, if the opponent does not change the command, the opponent's strength is not bad, but this command changed. The original attack became defense, and the original defense became evasion. This made Qingwei not know whether the commanding ability of the other party was gifted but not fulfilled or something other than a strange situation occurred. Soon, the final battle of this hearing versus Golduck was over. Although the key ring was not very used to it because of the first battle, his own consumption was also very large, but he still successfully defeated Golduck, who was at the same level as him, and ended the game with this one. Sure enough, did you lose? After the national character face announced the result of the battle, the third challenger looked at Golduck, who lost his fighting power but was not seriously injured, and couldn't help lowering his head. Now that it's over, the next thing to do is, just as this man was thinking about it, he heard the sound of rustling footsteps walking on the hard sandy ground in front of him. Come on, I guess I will be scolded even worse. Can you tell me about your command of the battle? However, the sound coming from his ear made him stunned for a moment, and he slowly raised his head, only to see Qingwei walking in front of him. But what he said made him a little puzzled. puzzled. My battle command. Yeah, I don't think you should be of this kind. Why was the commander so hesitant? Qingwei nodded very simply. He really didn't understand this now. Number 3 inches hesitated for a while, but still told what he had just said. Is it because I reproached the previous challenger for being too harsh, so you were hesitant to command? After hearing the explanation, Qingwei suddenly felt a little dumbfounded. He never thought that it was his own reason that the opponent's performance was affected. The reason I'm so hard on him is because he's using Pokemon that doesn't belong to him for the Holy Gym Challenge, and beyond that, his commanding abilities are really questionable. Qingwei still explained it to the other party. Otherwise, if he continued to misunderstand like this, he would become a big devil with a hated face when the word spread. Not your own Pokemon. Number 3 was done. Yeah, that Persian. It was obvious from the BJEA fight that it was a Pokemon trained to fight, but it didn't work well with him. After Qingwei said this, Number 3 completely recalled. So that Persian isn't his. I thought maybe he just won't take Persian for a long time, so he didn't cooperate. Well, that Persian has its own battle mentality, and this mentality has obvious traces of artificial training. It should be difficult to train a wild Persian, so I am so strict. Since this is the case, then I also understand. I will continue to train hard to get the badge. Number 3, who untied the knot in his heart, said firmly to Qingwei. Still fighting? No need. Qingwei shook his head, took out a badge from his pocket, and handed it over. Although you haven't been able to exert your full strength because of your previous influence, I can make a rough estimate. In my opinion, you are qualified. If you get this badge, then continue to work hard to improve yourself and challenge other gyms. Quote, from the battle just now, Qingwei can also see that there is actually a strong tacit understanding between this Number 3 and his Pokemon, but he suddenly changed the style of the battle, coupled with hesitant command. This made it difficult for even the Pokemon, who had a tacit understanding with him, to adapt for a while. Qingwei's strength is still relatively recognized. Generally speaking, Qingwei estimates that his strength may be stronger than Haji. Since Haji can get the badge, there is no reason why he can't get it. When gym leader, the most taboo is to ask the public with different standards. Qingwei is still clear about this. That really, thank you so much. Looking at the president in front of him, Number 3's eyes were full of surprises. I originally thought that I basically missed the badge for this challenge, especially when my performance was not much better than sleepwalking. But who knows, Qingwei can see his strength and give him the badge. Although Qingwei is young, he is a very good leader. After I go back, I have to pay more attention to the internet, like the person just now. Maybe it will spread bad words about Qingwei on the internet. Once I find this situation, I have to explain it in time. I can't let so many people misunderstand Qingwei. Quote, holding the badge, Number 3 silently made a decision in his heart. After sending the 3rd challenger away, it didn't take long for Qingwei to challenge the 4th and 5th challengers who came to the door one after another. The strength of Number 4 is very weak. Chapter 228 Let me ask a question. It seemed kinda simple. The 2 Pokemons of Number 4 are all ordinary, so Qingwei just dispatched one role and solved the other's 2 Pokemon. However, when he knew that the other party didn't have a badge, Qingwei also understood. This guy may not be so concerned about the way of the trainer, and seeing him get along well with his Pokemon, he should be the kind of person who simply like Pokemon tilde. As for challenging gym, for him, maybe it's just XX requirement. And looking at him like this, he didn't plan to collect enough badges to participate in the core conference. It was more likely to be a collection, as a souvenir, and he could show it to his younger generation in the future. Otherwise, a person who was a trainer didn't even have a gym badge when he got old. How shameful it would be to say it. Therefore, although Qingwei won very easily, in the end he generously handed the Viridian badge to the opponent. Challenger Number 5 is also not as strong as Haji and Number 3. Although Qingwei's senior Melodic and Mischievous have both lost their combat effectiveness before, they have been healed by Blossom and supplemented by Pokeblock. Although not back to the best form, but still relatively easy to win 2 games. However, the number of badges held by Number 5 now is the same as that of the original Haji. In this case, Qingwei just pointed out the shortcomings of the other party very friendly, and did not give the badge to the other party. In this way, the first day of Qingwei's temporary replacement of gym leader is over. All day, the 5 people who came to the challenge were the 5 people who confirmed their reservations on the internet yesterday. No newcomers came to challenge, and Qingwei only issued 3 badges. The pass rate is 60%, which is a bit looser than in Giovanni's time, but still a strict pass rate. But this is the first day, and this strict pass rate doesn't mean much. After finishing the gym battle, Qingwei took the Pokemon back to the training room, where his Pokemon were all playing. They had undergone intense training before, so Qingwei let them rest here later. Not long after Qingwei returned to the training room, lunch was also brought over by the staff. After eating a delicious lunch, Qingwei did not go back to the office to rest, but lay down on a mat in a corner of the training room. All the challengers came in the morning, so unless there are new challengers in the afternoon, his work is over for today, and it doesn't matter if he takes a little break at noon. However, just after Qingwei lay down, the Pokédex in his pocket vibrated hummingly when he was drowsy and dazed. I took out the Pokédex and saw an unknown caller number displayed on it. Who is it? The Union. Qingwei thought about it and connected the communication. Hello, I'm Qingwei. Is it the headquarters of the Nurturers Association? Do you have anything to do with me? Questions for the Pokemon appraisal test. At least 5. This. Can't someone else do it? Everyone above the intermediate level cultivator needs to give a question. Well, I know. How will I give it to you? Is it sent to 4X? I understand. Okay, goodbye. Qingwei, who hung up the communication, was still a little confused. Pokemon identification test. Could it be that they don't know that I am going to participate in this? Moreover, isn't this thing the League is responsible for every year? How did it become a question for the Nurturers Association? He was drowsy at first, but after receiving this communication, his whole person regained his energy. Although Qingwei was tossing and turning on the mat neck, he was no longer sleepy at all. So Qingwei lay down and began to think about what questions to ask. The problem is not difficult for Qingwei. The difficulty is that the difficulty of the problem should not be too high or too professional, and it should not be too simple for people to know the answer at a glance. It is from the dumbly. Originally, Qingwei thought that there were several Pokemon restraints, such as a Pokemon and a Pokemon, who restrained each other and so on. But after thinking about it carefully, for trainers other than Ash, it's just a question and answer. Unless he uses a lot of Pokemon from other regions far away for the title, which doesn't make much sense either. Qingwei, who was thinking hard for a long time, suddenly seemed to think of something, and laughed outright. It doesn't matter if he can't grasp the quantification of difficulty now. In his previous life, he had seen a lot of cold knowledge about Pokemon. The difficulty of these knowledge is not very high. The only difficulty is that these two words are rarely seen. With this idea, the next step is a lot easier. Qingwei simply thought about it in his mind, and all 5 questions were settled. So, he took out the Pokédex and started recording the questions on it. Half an hour later, Qingwei looked at the Pokédex in his hands in a daze. Am I getting too many questions? I saw a full 13 questions on his Pokédex from top to bottom, and when the Cultivator Association contacted him, they just said at least 5 things. Forget it, since it's all out, let's admit them all, or it's a pity to spend so much time thinking about the problems that came out for a long time and keep them in our hands. Qingwei thought about it, and decided to submit them all. So he finally checked the questions, and sent them to the address the Breeders Association told him. I don't know how many of my topic can be selected. I guess I won't be able to choose one. After sending it, Qingwei thought silently. This time, all the cultivators above the intermediate cultivator need to give the quiz. Although the number of senior cultivators is not very large, the number of intermediate cultivators is estimated to be quite large. Even if one person asks 5 questions, only 100 questions will be selected in the final exam paper, but the total number of questions asked is far greater than the number of 100. And Qingwei is the first time to ask questions, and he has no confidence in this. So in his estimation, if one of so many questions can be selected, it is already very good. However, as soon as his mind moved, Qingwei was no longer sleepy. After submitting the question, Qingwei was lying tossing and turning, completely unable to sleep. Helpless, he could only lie on the mat in a daze. The headquarters of the Nurturers Association, a large room on the first floor. Ask for flowers. 0. This is a larger office with 10 uniformed employees sitting in front of their respective workstation. There is a computer in front of each person, and next to the computer is a communication device. At this time, they are constantly holding the communication equipment, according to the list on the computer, to communicate with the people on the list. Iu is one of them. He put down the communicator in his hand, picked up the water glass beside him and took a sip. Then staring at the long list on the computer screen, he sighed. They were tasked from the morning with contacting the breeders on this list and asking them to quiz for the upcoming Pokemon identification test. Although it sounds like a very easy job, just pick up the phone, call the number, notify the other party of the question, and then submit the question at the latest time. But in fact, every time they make a phone call together, they have to waste a lot of words to succeed, because when calling senior cultivators who often ask questions in the past, they would try their best to avoid this question. 0. After all, at least half of the senior cultivators are now at the level of elderly, and these people are basically serving in the various regional chapters of the Nurturers Association. Although it is not like the big bosses at the headquarters of the Nurturers Association who only focus on research and don't care about anything on weekdays, but these big guys in the association branch are also the ones who are addicted to research. It's just that they will occasionally pay attention to the affairs of the association branch, and they are only a little bit stronger than the bosses in the headquarters. But for things like quizzes, you have to know how many years these big guys have become senior cultivators. In the past, there was a question every every 5 years or so, and at least 10 questions started. After so many years, the freshness of the question has long been lost. It can even be said that the questions from these big guys are a little tired. Moreover, these people are also addicted to research. If the affairs of the association branch where those people are located are okay, they may still care about and participate in it, but this kind of boring thing, of course they don't want to participate. So, when Ayu was talking with these bigwigs, although the voice intonation from the communicator was different, and the words were different, but the general meaning was the same. I was addicted to a research recently, and I didn't have time. I don't have the energy to pay attention to the Pokemon appraisal test this time, and the collection of questions has been missed for a year anyway. In this case, it's better to use the previous questions this year. When I have time next year, I will definitely participate actively. Question. Basically, after they heard Ayu's word, what they expressed was the same meaning, and some even went a little further and said directly, I am conducting a very important research. If this research is successful, there will be enough to go down in history. This is only one small step for me, but one giant leap for all of us nurturers and human beings. Listen, what this said. The level has been raised to the point where it affects all mankind. Everyone has said this. How dare a small staff member in Ayu stop him? Towel. 9.802 0 feet 5.85 feet 6. 1 by 1. Daily update. 1 by 1. From Fiction Group 980th. 20 feet 5. 8 inches 5 6. Chapter 229. Big guys with their own characteristic. That's right. Even though Ayu works at the headquarters of the Nurturing Home Association, to these bigwigs, he is still just a small staff member. Ayu first heard this when contacting a senior nurturing cultivator in the Saffron City Nurturing Association branch. And this senior cultivator is indeed a big boss, and he also serves as the vice president of the Cultivator Association in Saffron City. Ayu even knew that if the vice president really counts, he is still a brother-in-law with a big brother at the headquarters of the association. It's just that he is a few years younger than the boss at the headquarters. According to qualification, people can also stay at the headquarters of the association, but because his family is in Saffron City, he chose to serve there. The position of vice president of the branch. On weekdays, it is said that he is also a person who only cares about research and nothing. 180 inches said such word, and Ayu really didn't dare to stop him. If the family is really engaged in research like Pokeblock that can make the whole world make a big step forward, but the research fails because of his phone call, isn't Ayu a sinner in the Pokemon world? At that time, being pointed out by thousands of people will be considered light. Now that the internet is so developed, he still knows that if such a thing spreads on the internet, he will immediately become a social death, and even more seriously, he may even lose hope for the rest of his life. You know, he is still young, and he doesn't even have a girlfriend yet. So when he heard what the other party said, Ayu hesitated for a while, but agreed to the other party's request not to ask questions. However, soon, he realized that something was wrong. After he hung up the communication with the vice president, he persuaded the two senior cultivators to agree to the question, and on the third phone call, the reason of the other party made him feel a little familiar. I really don't have time to conduct research that affects the process of the whole world, mainly because the question is not just randomly selected. I have to think about it for a long time, which will affect my research. Quote, in this way, I owe the question this time. If I can finish the research before the deadline for submitting the question, I will make up the question immediately. If it is really too late, then I will give the double answer when the question is submitted next time. Double the questions. No, I triple the question. Okay, that's it. There seems to be something wrong with the experiment. I'll hang up first. Beep beep. This is also a senior cultivator working in a branch of the Cultivator Association, but he seems to be a little easier to talk than the vice president. But in the end, no one gave Ayu a chance to speak, so they hung up the phone in one go, leaving Ayu in a daze before opening his mouth. Not to mention, the reason is exactly the same as that of the vice president. This is also the main reason why Ayu feels wrong. Although these big guys in his eyes are powerful, but can anyone produce research that affects the course of the world? Isn't this Nima nonsense? How many inventions and researches have had an impact on the world so far? This is still so many regions. So researchers, I don't know how much effort and energy it took to finally develop it successfully. Now he made 4 random calls by the names on the list, and it turned out that there were 2 people doing this kind of research. In an instant, Ayu realized it. I was still too young to even hear the excuses the other party made for not answering the question. What affect the world? Isn't it all nonsense? If it could influence the world, it would have spread in the circle long ago. Even if he is not an insider of the circle, he can still be regarded as an outsider of the circle. Even if the news is not as well informed as the inside of the circle, he can still learn some things from the usual chats of various colleagues at the headquarters of the Cultivator Association. News, but he didn't know it before again. Isn't that obviously mocking him? Having figured this out, Ayu couldn't help but sigh. What can he do if he knows? With his identity and status, he can't command those big bigwigs at all. Then, he started staring at the list on the computer screen and stared blankly. Each of them has a similar amount of tasks, and they all contact 7 or 8 senior cultivators and a relatively large number of intermediate cultivators. Now he has only contacted 5. I've already gotten 2 replies. There are 3 others next, and looking at one of them, Ayu is even more worried. Speaking of which, this has something to do with the vice president of Saffron City who was the first to reject him. This is the president of the Saffron City Nurturing Association branch. This chairman, Ayu heard colleagues talking about it when he was chatting with colleagues over dinner. According to his coworkers, this is a big bad-tempered mega, and even when he is not angry, he speaks loudly. This kind of loud voice made many staff members of the association think that the other party was a little angry when facing him, or whether they did something wrong. Then I lowered my voice unconsciously, which led to a consequence. That is, the other party can't hear the staff clearly. Then, the other party's violent temper really came up. Then, the staff member who talked to him would really be scolded severely by him. The old people who have experienced this are fine, but this is the first time they face this person. And Ayu, it is the first time he has made a big phone call to the other party. Ayu adjusted his mentality, took another sip of water, and then dialed the other party's communication with an uneasy mood. It just, the first time I dialed out, no one answered when it was completely 4.0. Is there no one? Ayu hesitated for a moment, then called again, but the result was the same as the first time. No one answered. So, hesitating again and again, he dialed a third time. This time, after a few beeps, someone answered. Hey, who is it? Don't you know you can't disturb me at this time? As soon as the communication was connected, Ayu heard a deafening sound from the communicator. The sound made his ears buzzing, and he even felt that if he listened to such a sound for a little longer, he might have gone deaf. Hello, President, I'm Ayu, a staff member of the Headquarters Affairs Department of the Nurturers Association. Ayu reported himself to his family in a panic. Department of Affairs. What is that? I don't know. Chapter 230 _ still the young family is good to talk. Drop by drop. Then, the other party rudely hung up the communication. Ayu almost wanted to cry but had no tears, so he finally got through the phone, but the other party hung up right after he reported himself to the house. The last person who hung up on the phone had to tell him a lot of reasons before hanging up, but now this one hangs up as soon as he comes up. It's so hard for me. Ayu took a few deep breaths and dialed the communication again. This time, the connection was relatively quick. Who is it? What's the matter? A deafening voice came from the communicator. This time, Ayu also summoned his courage and said in a loud voice, I am Ayu from the headquarters of the Breeders Association. This year, the Pokemon Identification Exam question bank will be updated, so all senior cultivators are required to submit it before XX. Drop. I'm so stupid. Ayu slammed down the communicator. This job is simply not done by humans. Next, Ayu is not going to call the grumpy president again. He had heard the phrase, the Violent Saffron City Breeders Association, before. Now, it seems that each and every one of them is more than just a violent temper. As it is now, even if he calls again, it is estimated that he will still be scolded. As for these difficulties, Ayu is ready to give his superiors a headache. Anyway, he is just a small employee. Even if the sky falls, there is still a tall man on his back, and in terms of calls alone, he has not made any mistake. Ayu then dialed the communication of the last senior nurturer on his list. The communication was quickly connected, and the voice over the communication was a female voice. Hello, this is the Aoki breeding house. What's the matter? Ayu was stunned when he heard the female voice, and then looked at the list carefully, only to see that the last name written on the list was the name of the family reported by the female voice. Aoki breeding house. Soon, Ayu thought of where the Aoki breeding house was. Isn't this a well-known breeding house in Cerulean City? Moreover, it became famous not long ago within the Nurturing Home Association. As for the reason, it is not because the couple are both senior cultivated homeowners, but because of their children. Qingwei. Hello, are you Ms. Mako? Well, I'm Mako. May I ask who you are? I am Ayu, a staff member of the Headquarters Affairs Department of the Nurturing Association. This time I contacted you because Ayu spoke quickly and explained the purpose of his call. These two should talk better, right? While waiting for the other party's reply, Ayu thought silently in his heart. Because of Qingwei's reasons, many staff at the headquarters of the association learned about the Aoki couple from the side. In general, these two can be considered young and promising models, but after they got married, the two began to travel. It was not until Mako became pregnant with Qingwei that the two returned to Cerulean City to open a breeding house and settle down. On weekdays, they basically guarded the 1/3 of an acre of land without moving. If the association had any business for them, they would complete it quickly. In general, the people at the current headquarters of the association have a good impression of these two. Hi, I'm Aoki. Just when Ayu was thinking about it, a slightly muffled man's voice came from the communicator. Is it necessary to give a question for this year's Pokemon appraisal test? Right, I know about this. Please send the way to submit it later. Give it to me and I'll give it and turn it in on time. Okay, I'll tell you the way now. The way is. Ayu reacted and told Aoki the mailing address word by word, and then said with a little emotion, "Thank you for your cooperation." Oh, some people refused for some reason. Thank you for your hard work. In the end, Ayu didn't expect that Aoki on the opposite side of the communicator actually heard his hidden meaning from his word, and even comforted him in turn. Immediately, he felt that the fire in his stomach seemed to dissipate now. Is the world still beautiful? Isn't there some good people like Mr. Aoki and Ms. Mako? From now on, Ayu, will be a 10-year-old fan of the Aoki family. It's not hard. Then I won't bother you. You continue to be busy. After Ayu simply thanked him, he hung up the communication. At this point, the contact with his senior cultivator is complete. The other half is not because our army is not working hard, but because the enemy army is too cunning, and he can't deal with this big soldier. Immediately afterward, Ayu looked at the second page of the list on the computer screen. Starting from the second page, there are obviously many more names and contact information marked on it. These are all intermediate cultivators. This year, it was suddenly notified that there were more questions from intermediate cultivators, which also made their workload in the future invisibly increase a lot. In the past, there were so many senior cultivators. Although it was difficult to get in touch, the number was more than a little less. Now it is difficult to get through the contact of senior cultivators, but there are countless names waiting for him. However, Ayu soon saw a familiar name at the end of the list on the second page. Qingwei. Good guy. The contact information for a family of 3, but he was in charge of 2 of them. Then, without hesitation, he directly dialed Qingwei's communication, because he believes that parents are so easy to talk to and get along with, and the children born are not far behind. The result was as he expected. After Qingwei connected to the communication, he listened to his story very seriously, and then asked some detailed questions. Since he had just ended the communication with Qingwei's father, the anger in his stomach was almost gone. In addition, he had an excellent impression of the Aoki couple, so he patiently gave Qingwei one item by one, explaining. In the end, Qingwei's polite farewell also made him feel better. Sure enough, the fine gene of courtesy is inherited. Ayu thought in his heart when he dialed the communication of the second intermediate cultivator. And when he wants to come, since this is the first time to collect questions for intermediate cultivators, presumably these people should pay more attention. At least they will agree. Result. 3 hours later, Ayu hung up a communication in a fit of anger. He was resurrected with full blood 3 hours ago, but now he has ended his communication with the president of Saffron City. Maybe it was because Aoki and Qingwei father and son brought him some good luck in the beginning. The first few middle-level nurturers on his list were easy to talk to each other when they contacted him, and I am also more interested in the questions that come up. After all, I have never been exposed to these before, and the number of questions is not too much, just a few questions. So these people agreed more readily, but the people behind were not so easy to talk about. Even he was unlucky to contact a person, and the other party opened his mouth just like the president, speaking loudly to death, and the surroundings were extremely noisy. From the noises around, Ayu guessed that the other party might be playing with friends in some entertainment place, but after hearing him talk about the problem, the other party directly said, I am currently researching at a critical juncture, and I can't open it. Body, just hang up like this. Then the other party just hung up the phone. At that time, Ayu was a little annoyed. Did Nima's opponent regard himself as deaf? With all the singing and clinking glasses around, is Nima doing research in a restaurant or a KTV? Can Ayu endure this situation? Of course not. Then he made another communication call. After the other party connected, he also increased the volume by 180, and explained to the other party that this was the association's request. But the other party replied, my uncle is XXX. You go to him. Then hung up again. And the XXX this person mentioned is the president of the Saffron City Cultivator branch that Ayu contacted at the beginning. Hearing the name, Ayu almost exploded. Nima, how bad is your luck? Can these strange and violent uncles and nephews meet all of them? But Ayu had no other way. Everyone moved out of his uncle, and he was obviously not the opponent of the other's uncle, so he just marked it on the list and switched to the next call. It's just the mark above, and a parenthesis that reads, judging from the background voice of the other party connecting to the communication, the other party is in a certain entertainment place, but the other party's reason is that there is no time for critical research. He thought that after this violent second generation, the next things should be much smoother. It turned out that he guessed wrong again. Some mid-level cultivators made a very wrong promise, but others were also looking for various excuses. Let's say I'm busy preparing for the senior nurturer's exam. As a result, after the communication ended, Ayu checked and found that this person just passed the assessment to become an intermediate cultivator last month. When he saw the other party's information, Ayu almost spit out a mouthful of water. Nima's, he passed the test to become an intermediate, and after a month he began to prepare for the advanced advanced test. Qingwei is not as fast as you. Moreover, he was actually hung up by the other party's initiative to hang up the communication. Is this because he is too mentally handicapped, or is the other party too witty? P.S. I'm sorry, I thought this chapter was posted in the early morning. I didn't expect that. I forgot to post it last night. Chapter 231 Want to fool me? No way. Feeling that his IQ was hit, Ayu called another communication that he thought was an intermediate cultivator. As a result, after the communication was over, he realized that his IQ had been hit again. The other party's answer in the communication was, I have been preparing hard for many years, and I have just become an intermediate cultivator not long ago. Then, facing this name, Ayu checked the other party's information on the big list inside the headquarters. See Mumu, 43 years old, became an intermediate nurturer at the age of 29, and has been in the position of an intermediate nurturer for many years now. Although he is an intermediate nurturer, but the association believes that the accumulation of this person is already good, and it is more optimistic that he will pass the assessment and become a senior cultivator soon. Graph. A plan. One of Nima's big bosses who is about to become a senior breeder. How about pretending to be new to him? After the lessons of these two, Ayu would check the other party's simple information before making a phone call, and only after he had a basic understanding of the other party would he make a call. Sure enough, later he met some people who found similar excuses to avoid the question, but now it is much easier for him to deal with it, and a few words can make the other party speechless. But just when he thought he was very witty, some people agreed to be refuted by him, while some people were simply scumbag, and even more directly turned into irritable old brothers. In turn, he asked Ayu why he wanted to investigate his personal information privately. How can Nima's data be used for special investigation? These basic information are basically open to the public within the association. In this way, Ayu contacted a whole page of communication in the torment, but there is still a page full of who. It was already afternoon, and it was almost time to get off work. Ayu looked at the densely packed names and contact information on the second page, and his head was overwhelmed. I had no choice but to stand up and stretch out to move my body. As a result, he saw that the expressions on his colleague faces were not much better at this time. This time, Ayu suddenly felt a lot more comfortable. It seems that I am not alone in the bad luck, but these people are difficult to deal with. People, what I fear most is injustice, and now there are 9 people who suffer with him. This time he felt a lot more balanced. The violent temper that was about to be suppressed has also weakened a little. After Ayu stood up, someone also noticed him. After looking at Ayu, they both saw deep exhaustion and rage who couldn't hide in each other's eyes. Then, both of them had fun. Look, isn't Jia a brother in trouble? The laughter of the two was not deliberately suppressed, and their laughter also attracted the attention of other colleagues. So, people in the whole office stopped working temporarily. You looked at me, I looked at you, and then just smirked. But in the laughter, a trace of exhaustion and rage can still be heard. At this time, Ayu, who had finished moving his body, also sat down again. The relaxation this time made him recover a little bit of energy just as he looked at the roster and was about to continue working. As a result, a prompt popped up on his computer to receive an email. Ayu didn't react for a while, because the email address for this reminder was specially used to receive the questions uploaded by these breeders. These people are not only responsible for notifying the various cultivators to issue the question, but also responsible for collecting and sorting out the questions they passed over, and conducting preliminary screening. That is to say, they are also responsible for the initial review of the question. They will do these questions first. If there are some particularly outrageous questions, they will contact the corresponding question maker and ask them to reissue the question. After they feel that there is no problem, they will turn in these questions and let his superiors conduct a second review. Now, he hasn't even notified these cultivators yet, and as a result, someone has passed on the topic. Isn't this Nima making my Ayu a treasure? Can you think of the right topic in a few hours? It's not so fast to open and hang. Nima, don't you think we are all fooled? Yeah, these people think of us as mentally handicapped. Think that you can fool the past by just writing a few words. Today, Ayu, will teach you a truth. That is, we are professionals. Want to fool us? No way. Ayu angrily clicked on the email, ready to start nitpicking, and then directly contacted the other party and scolded him fiercely to vent the pent-up anger in his heart. Result: when he opened the email and saw the sender's name, he was done, because the sender's name is too familiar to him. It was the very beginning that gave him a lot of warm green brilliance. Could it be that I misjudged him? On the surface, I agreed quickly, but in fact, I still want to fool him. If that's the case, then shouldn't his father also be? Ayu thought silently, but he also remembered that when talking to these two people, both the attitude and the tone of the other party's words made him feel very comfortable, so he shook his head unconsciously. No, Qingwei too. He has only become a mid-level cultivator, and at such a young age, it is normal to do things in a hurry, and such a young person may not have a lot lot of reserve. And when I called Qingwei earlier, the other party may have been thinking about these topics since he answered the phone. Young man, you still have to understand. I'll look at his topic first, and then I'll give him a call to teach him something. After all, I'm a newcomer, and I'm barely half a senior. The one who got the money. Thinking about it, Ayu opened the file passed by the other party, then swiped down with the mouse, and the whole person was stunned again. Isn't the number of questions wrong? I remember when I told him, it seemed to be 5 questions, but now it's 1, 2, 3, 12, 13. 13 questions. Why are you kidding me? No. P.S. This episode is a little long, because when I was writing it, I unconsciously remembered that when I was working as a headhunter 2 years ago, there were really all kinds of people I contacted. Like after hearing what you said after a long time, he hung up the phone without saying a word, spoke in a very grumpy voice, etc. I sighed a few words without realizing it when I wrote this. I hope everyone can understand. Chapter 232 _ Can this be called a title? Look at me. Originally, the thought that Qingwei might be a newcomer and the issue of age is doing things in a hurry, but now unconsciously it has been shattered. Nima, can you come up with so many questions in more than 3 hours? Even the senior cultivators before, those who are older and don't know how many big brothers have accumulated, they need to carefully consider for a long time when they come up with such a question. Now these more than a dozen courses, Qingwei should not regard this as a game, right? If it were just 5 questions, he would still be willing to believe that Mincy thought hard for 3 hours to come up with it, but now, if he hadn't been fooled by these dozen or so questions, Ayu could have eaten this computer directly. No, Mr. Aoki is such a good person. How can he give birth to a son who doesn't take business seriously? I have to be hard on the thorn, and then educate Qingwei in place of Mr. Aoki. Ayu thought so, and looked at the screen again. As a result, he turned up and down, and he was even more determined that Qingwei wanted to fool around, because Qingwei only sent the question, but did not send the answer dazedly. Isn't this funny? As a question maker, who is not the answer to the question also at the end or in the middle of the title? And Qingwei, this is 13 questions, and there is no answer. Dumbfounded. Hey, a teenage kid. I should be able to get the answer very easily. Just a. When I find out the problems of these topics, I will contact Qingwei and tell him about it. It can't be like this in the future, alas. Then, Ayu pulled the question to the top, and it seemed that the first question came. 10 minutes later. Well, 180. Ayu bit the index finger of his left hand unconsciously. This is a habit he developed when he was a child. When thinking carefully, he would bite his finger unconsciously. After biting his fingers for a while, he opened the drawer of his desk and took out the pen and paper inside. I didn't expect that the first question he asked was not about cultivators but about trainers. The key is still a calculation problem. This is the first time I've seen it. But Qingwei seems to be very talented in terms of trainers, so he will ask questions about trainers. However, although I don't know much about trainers, it shouldn't be a big problem to solve such a problem. Ayu thought about it and looked at the topic carefully. Another 10 minutes passed. What does it mean to move on an electric field line? What is an electric field line? What is an equipotential surface? Does this thing have every parameter? Qingwei doesn't think any rookie trainer will know these things. And where did he hear these things? Why didn't I hear them before? Have you heard of it? No, don't care about these 2 things. I'll assume that there is no such effect, and then use the data he gave to calculate first, although the result may be wrong. But this is not my problem. It is Qingwei's side the problem. I have to talk to him properly. Well, the value he gave is 150. It's still the first attack. That is to say, the attack is launched without danger. The final damage should be counted like this. Well, BJEA, another 10 minutes. Ayu scratched his head and looked at the paper on the table. At this point, there were already 6 sheets of paper on his desk, and these 6 sheets of paper are filled with various numbers and formulas. Nima's how to calculate this. This can't be calculated. This is too imprecise. Even if Magikarp was beaten, who knows what Magikarp's lowest defense is? And Magikarp's stamina is set to be infinitely high. But defense can't always be 0 or 1, right? This is not a question. This is a bug. Ayu now feels like he is about to collapse. And now it's time to get off work, and his colleagues have begun to leave their workstations and retreat to their homes to enjoy life one after another. And for more than half an hour, there are so many people on the second page who have not been contacted, so he has not yet answered such a question. Isn't this Nima outrageous? No, this question is all bug. I have to call him back and ask him to rewrite the question. In the end, Ayu gave up understanding the question and opened the email to prepare a reply to Qingwei. Now he is no longer in the mood to call Qingwei. In his opinion, Qingwei may have some skills, but his work is a little too frizzy. Just like this topic, he said something he couldn't understand at first, but the data he gave later seemed to be incomplete. Let him simply have an answer. Can't get it. Just when he edited the email and was about to click send, Ayu suddenly hesitated again. Could it be that I don't know much about trainers? Magikarp should have a minimum defense value. you. Or I'll take it and ask the boss. Ayu hesitated for a while but moved the mouse to close the email interface on the computer. Then, he printed a copy of the test document sent by Qingwei, stood up with this examination paper, and walked out of the office. As soon as he got out of the office, he walked quickly towards his boss's office, thinking as he walked, I hope the boss hasn't gotten off work now. Otherwise, this topic will really make me sleepless all night. Soon, he came to the leadership's office. Dong dong dong. Without hesitation, he knocked on the door directly. Come in. Soon, a voice came from inside. Ayu breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the leader was still there at this time. Otherwise, if he had left after get off work, he would really lose sleep over this topic today. Then, Ayu pushed open the door directly. In the office, the middle-aged man who was in charge of the Pokemon identification test, who was in contact with the higher-ups in the morning, was sitting at the desk. Although the person was sitting, he was cleaning up the things on the table, and the computer on his side had also been turned off at this time, and it seemed that he was also ready to get off work. Pokemon World doesn't like the idea of forced overtime. Of course, if you work overtime, there must be overtime pay, but except for a few who love their work, or if the task is about to expire, there is usually no one who chooses to work overtime, especially those who work in the Nurturing Home Association or the Alliance. Apart from emergency orders, departments like them that are usually regarded as Qingshui Yamen are even less willing to work overtime, and this middle-aged man obviously knew this, so when he gave Ayu and the others an order in the morning, the task requirements were also included today, and all the contact was completed within 3 days. Relatively speaking, this task time has been very loose for them. For example, the list on the second page, as long as the people on it are not difficult for everyone to speak, and it takes a long time to persuade them with reason, it can be completed in 1 day tomorrow. The reason why the middle-aged people left them 3 days is also considering that there are more new questions this year, and they need more time to fully explain the whole process, as well as the time reserved for persuading those who are not good at speaking. Seeing one of his subordinates walk in with a piece of paper, the middle-aged man asked without raising his head while clearing the table, It's Ayu. What's the matter? Boss, it's like this. Today I contacted half of the intermediate cultivators. Ayu walked to the desk opposite the middle-aged man, and said, Half? It's pretty good. I will try to get all the contact tomorrow. There are also those senior cultivators who are not easy to talk about. Please notify them in time. Don't delay. The middle-aged man said directly, What's your business with me? You're not just here to report on your work, are you? No, I just received a question. Ayu said immediately. The question? We only started contacting at noon, and someone has finished the question now. Who is the senior cultivator? Hearing Ayu's word, the middle-aged man also became interested. Damn, in the past few years, the time for them to submit the questions is relatively late. It seems that this question came out not long after the notification. Since he became the person in charge of this is the first time I have seen it. The middle-aged man thought that Ayu would name a name he was familiar with and was one of the more active senior cultivators in the association. In the end, who would have thought that? Ayu shook his head. Boss, not a senior breeder, but an intermediate breeder. Qingwei. What? Qingwei? The middle-aged man was stunned. Of course, he knew much more about the name Qingwei than Ayu in front of him. In any case, he can be regarded as a middle-level cadre of the Cultivator Association, while Ayu is only a junior staff member at the grassroots level. It seems that Qingwei passed the assessment of intermediate cultivators at the youngest age. Although this matter is very widespread, basically everyone in the association knows about it, but their understanding only stopped there. These people don't know the decision of the follow-up association to vigorously cultivate Qingwei. They just know that Qingwei is a newcomer with strong potential, and he knows a lot, including things like Qingwei enjoying a lot of resources every month. He has basically heard of it, and he also knows that the association's attitude towards Qingwei is very important. However, even if Qingwei is a villainous person, how many questions can he solve in just a few hours? The attitude of middle-aged people is similar to that of Ayu, and basically they don't believe it. Then what you brought here is Qingwei's question. Chapter 233_0. It turns out it's just a calculation problem. The middle-aged man now thinks that he probably understands what Ayu means. It is precisely because Qingwei is too fast in answering the question that the other party brings it to him to see it like this. Yes, it was Qingwei's question, but Ayu said, and put 2 pieces of paper on the table. What wrong? Let me see. The middle-aged man took the test paper and first turned to the second page out of curiosity. After all, the title given by one person cannot be printed on a single sheet of paper, let alone the second page. Then, he saw the word 13 in front of the last question. He asked 13 questions. The middle-aged man hurriedly counted up again, and sure enough, there were a lot of 13 questions. Yes, Qingwei sent 13 questions. I briefly looked at it before, but I encountered some problems with the first question. Ayu nodded immediately and said, the first question he asked was about trainers, and I'm not very good at trainers, you know. Trainer question. I have been a trainer for a long time before. Let me take a look. Following Ayu's word, the middle-aged man also became a little curious and then began to look at the problem. And he always has a habit when he reads the question, that is to read the questions in a low voice, which can improve his concentration when doing the questions, which is also a habit he has developed since he was a child. Cling-clang with negative electricity is only subjected to the action of electric field force in an electrical field, and can complete the following two movements respectively. Cling-clang. The middle-aged man was a little stuck when he saw the first sentence, so he thought for a while before raising his voice unconsciously. Cling-clang seems to be a Pokemon from Unova region, right? Yes, Cling-clang is the final evolution of Clink for Unova region. Ayu nodded. He was also stuck here at first, but he was witty and directly checked the relevant information of Cling-clang from the computer, and only then did he realize that this kind of Pokemon came from Unova region, and the appearance after evolution is a bit similar to the Magnemite on Kanto. Similar to this combination splicing, and middle-aged people can think of Cling-clang's information just by thinking about it, which is enough to see that their knowledge of Pokemon is much better than that of Ayu. After getting Ayu's affirmative answer, the middle-aged man nodded, recalled the impression of Cling-clang in his mind, and then continued to read the question. 1. Cling-clang moves on the electric field line. 2. Do it on the equipotential surface uniform circular motion. Then, the middle-aged man's brows wrinkled again. What are these electric field line? What the hell is an equipotential surface? Is it the latest electrical research? Or what about Pokemon skills? But the subordinate is standing opposite now. The middle-aged man doesn't want to show his ignorance in front of the subordinate. After all, his trainer ability is much stronger than the other party. If you ask such a question at this time, in case the other party answered, isn't his leader very shameless? Then, just like Ayu's previous reaction, he directly jumped over these two questions and continued to look down. Excuse me. After the electrical field disappears, assuming that Cling-clang's physical attack power is 150 points, he has the right to attack first. When Cling-clang uses an iron roller to attack a Magikarp, assuming Magikarp's physical strength is infinite, how much damage can it cause at the most? This doesn't seem to be difficult. Isn't there a formula for that? As long as you put a simple damage calculation formula into it, you should be able to calculate the damage value, right? The middle-aged man looked up and said after reading the question. At the same time, he took a pen from the table and began to write formulas on paper. But after he wrote the formula, he suddenly found a question. What is the physical defense of this Magikarp? If there is a specific value of physical defense, he can calculate the maximum damage value instantly, because it only needs to put the data above the formula according to the theoretical maximum value to complete the calculation. However, there is no such key data now. Is there a problem with the title? The middle-aged man whispered. Isn't it? Hearing the middle-aged man's word, Ayu just wanted to nod. He thought so too. As for flowers, 0 inches, but I always feel that something is not quite right. The middle-aged man didn't look at Ayu, who was nodding wildly. He was still frowning at the question. Just looking at the questions behind. This topic is actually full of Pokemon school-style questions, because the quantification of this kind of attack value and defense value was deliberately quantified by the Pokemon Academy in order to teach students to have a deeper understanding of Pokemon, their skills, and the effects of Pokemon's battles. Of course, this only represents the value of ordinary Pokemon. In fact, if you really fight, if you want to use these data mechanically, you will definitely lose without knowing how to lose. Oh, this is also the annual core conference. Although there are many people who come out to participate in the competition in the Pokemon school, the biggest reason why there are very few people walking behind. Although these students have a very good understanding of Pokemon, their understanding is from the book, and they are deeply influenced by the various values in the book. But in fact, the real potential of a Pokemon is very great. As long as you are willing to spend your energy to cultivate it carefully, Pokemon can break through the maximum value limit in the book. In the previous study of these people, they were deeply affected by these, which led to the subconscious thinking of the data in the book during the battle. So because of their own Pokemon restraint and other reasons, they looked down on the opponent's Pokemon, which eventually led to the defeat of the battle. This is also the main reason why, in recent years, in the Alliance and the Nurturing Association, there have been people who have advocated for the reform of Pokemon Academy. Many people now advocate that the students of Pokemon Academy not only stay in school all day and study hard every year so that they will become nerds sooner or later, but have enough time every year to go to the wild and to be like those traveling trainers, real meet Pokemon in the Pokemon world. But if you reform like this, you will encounter another problem. The main reason many parents send their children to Pokemon schools is safety. Towel. Chapter 234 understood. Don't blame my dish. It's the topic beyond the outline. Yes, many parents are still worried about the safety of their children. If you let it travel in the wild, especially if you are a child, it will be difficult difficult to deal with some danger. That's why they thought about sending their children to school to study, at least to have an understanding of the whole world and master more knowledge, so that even when they travel again in the future, they will have more ability to deal with danger. Just when students are in school for too long, they are swayed by those books. Although the data on the book can make it easier for them to understand the restraint effect of each skill move and each attribute, but it will have such a negative impact over time. Moreover, for example, in Pokemon School, the age at entry is basically 7 or 8 years old. In this case, if they are allowed to go out for field trip every year, children of this age are not only those from big families or are genius, otherwise it is difficult for ordinary people to deal with danger. In this case, if you want to let them travel, you have to send more teachers to follow the care, which is not realistic at all. How can there be so many teachers to send? Or the Alliance specially divided a few 180 inches plot, and used these plots as places like Pokemon Reserve where a large number of Pokemon were artificially placed, and let the school students come here to experience it on the ground. But this involves another problem, that is, the cultivation of Pokemon in these regions is another big problem. Therefore, the Alliance and the Cultivator Association are currently undecided on this, but the data provided in these books, as well as the calculation formulas proposed by some researchers and professors, really have a very good coaching effect for a newcomer trainer or children. Therefore, this kind of calculation problem is very suitable for newcomers to solve the problem, and Qingwei gave these values, obviously like a calculation problem in the Pokemon Academy. In terms of difficulty, it only needs to apply a basic formula to calculate the final damage. It is really not difficult, as long as you know the formula, put these values in, and then you can get the result with a simple calculation. It's just that a key value needed in the formula has been missed. In this case, even middle-aged people can't do it. Suddenly, the middle-aged man's eyes suddenly saw the premise of the previous question, like what electric field is moving on a line, like what is the uniform circular motion of an equipotential surface. Could it be that Magikarp's own defense will be affected by this kind of thing? Well, Magikarp is a water-type Pokemon, and the electric field line is named after something related to electricity. Electricity has a double restraint effect on water type. Will these electric field lines affect Magikarp's own body? But the problem now is, what kind of thing electric field lines are? He really doesn't know that. Will the electric field lines affect Magikarp's own condition? This topic seems quite rigorous, and the first two sentences don't seem to be useless. Since Qingwei did not give the specific value of Magikarp's physical defense, I wonder if it has something to do with these two sentences. Relationship. We may be able to derive the Magikarp value from these two sentences. Quote, the middle-aged man raised his head and asked, "Ah, is that so? It makes sense. I didn't expect it at all before. Sure enough, he's the boss. He's amazing," Ayu said with an expression of sudden realization, and said in admiration at the same time. So, what are electric field line? What effect does it have? The middle-aged man asked, but what greeted him was indeed Ayu's confused expression. Electric field line. I don't know. Wow. Quote, question mark, question mark, question mark. You don't know either. Yeah. Did you not check this thing you don't understand when you see it? The middle-aged man's expression was a little out of place. Ayu said innocently, I checked, but I didn't find anything. Didn't find it. Isn't it in our database? No. Is it because of my lack of authority that some things can't be seen? Ayu said carefully. What he meant was that this electric field line was some information that was not ready to be released internally, and these little staff were not qualified to read it. It's possible what you said. Let me see. The middle-aged man nodded, then turned on the computer again and began to inquire. His qualifications are enough to consult most of the internal information of the Cultivator Association, but he has not come up with relevant information. Well, the association doesn't have any, so could it be the information from the Alliance? The middle-aged man quickly thought of a possibility. Qingwei is also a hot new star in the Alliance. Although he doesn't know the specific, he is not sure that Qingwei has the qualifications to inquire about the internal information there. Qingwei, doesn't he know that he is looking at undisclosed internal material? These materials are not accessible to those rookie trainers. This should be regarded as out of line. But this question is really good. It seems that Qingwei did not treat it perfunctorily, but seriously asked the question. But it was just a little out of line. Just need to change it. This is indeed a good question. Well, although I can't get enough of the information from the Alliance, who allow and the others are fine. Qingwei gave middle-aged people a bad impression at first, but now it has completely reversed. In his opinion, this question alone, with a little modification, is enough to be selected for this Pokemon appraisal test. As for an intermediate cultivator, if he can choose one of the 5 questions, it is already a good result. From the beginning, he estimated that everyone in the intermediate cultivator can choose one question. Thank God. Although it is small, it is supported by the number of intermediate cultivators, which is generally enough to support the number of questions in the question bank. In other words, Qingwei has has basically completed his task by relying on this question. Thinking of this, the middle-aged man raised his head. Go back first. Leave the question with me. I'll ask the old man. He should know. Having said this, Ayu is about to salute and go back to pack up and retreat. When I went home to relax, I heard that the middle-aged man suddenly changed his word. No, I will delay you for a while. Now come with me to find Huo Lao. Qingwei belongs to the person you are responsible for after all, so you should follow. It's better to get to know each other together. The middle-aged man had just finished speaking when he suddenly thought of Mr. Huo's violent temper. He had just closed the door in the morning. If he went again now, he might be sprayed with dog blood by the other party. Bring a younger brother over to help him share some of the firepower. So, his brain turned quickly, and he came up with an excuse for the person in charge of Qingwei to force his younger brother to go up with him. Okay, Ayu has no idea what the middle-aged person thinks, and he usually has no chance to meet the real cultivator. No, maybe it can be said to be such a part of the big guy at the top of the Pokemon world. Although I have vaguely heard that these big guys seem to be obsessed with research and don't like being disturbed by others, but after all, they are really big guys at the top, and everyone has made a certain contribution to the development of the Pokemon world. Now that I have the opportunity to meet one of them, Ayu is of course excited. After all, there is no guarantee that Feng Shui will take turn, and he will be able to sit in that position decades later. Now that you know the other person first, you can also gain some insight for yourself, and shorten your time in the top position a little bit. Right, then let go now. The middle-aged man immediately took the paper, stood up and walked out of the office together with Ayu, who was inexplicably excited. Soon, they came to the door of Huo Lao's office. Then, he knocked on the door. This time, instead of no one responding like in the morning, a voice quickly came from inside. Who is it? Come in directly. The middle-aged and Ayu sorted out their clothes a little at the door, then pushed open the door and walked in. When he entered the door, Mr. Huo was sitting on the sofa with a bento in his hand and was eating. Seeing that a middle-aged man brought a young man in, Huo Lao was a little puzzled. What's the matter? What the problem? That's it. We started to contact the Pay 4.0 educators from all over the world to start the question in the afternoon, and then Qingwei passed his question over just now. I looked at it, and the question was good, but it seemed a little out of context. Middle-aged people are cautious in their word for fear of being sprayed, and Ayu is even more nervous. This is his first close contact with the big guy. While he was nervous, he was still snickering secretly. It turned out that he was a very dignified leader when he was doing business, but his actions and tone were so nervous. Is the introduction the aura of the big guy? Although he didn't feel anything, he still felt very powerful. Qingwei, is it the child of that little guy Aoki? Huo Lao, who was eating, was stunned for a moment, and quickly asked. Huo Lao was more than twice as old as Qingwei's father Aoki, and Aoki was considered a genius boy back then, and they all knew such a person. So there is nothing wrong with Huo Lao calling him a little guy. Well, it's him. His question seems to involve something like electric field line. I don't know anything about this, and I couldn't find it in the data, so I wanted to come and ask if you know. Electric field line. What's that? Never heard of it. Chapter 235 _ Are you two having problems with your mind? None of this. Although Huo Lao is old, his memory has not retreated at all. When the middle-aged man uttered the word electric field line, he quickly went through it in his mind to confirm that he had never heard of this term. However, Huo Lao's answer also stunned the two of them. After a long time, the middle-aged talent stuttered and asked, Then you don't know? Huo Lao put down the bento in his hand and shook his head. I don't know. I've never heard of it. Did you bring the topic? Show me. Now Huo Lao has also developed some interest. Although he is now an extremely senior trainer, his attainments in trainers are also not low. Most of the high-level members of the association, although they are studying every day, their Pokemon strength is not low. After all, as a senior cultivator, if you can't even cultivate your own Pokemon, how can you continue to study it? However, because they are obsessed with research all the year round, it is true that their own Pokemon lack training. But just eating Dabu pills every day, the strength of 19 Pokemon is not much worth. And this old Huo, although the surname is Huo, but the signature Pokemon back then is not a fire-type Pokemon, but a Raichu. At the same time, several of his other Pokemon are mainly electric Pokemon. Now that he heard electric field line, a term that has something to do with electricity, he is also interested. Hearing what Mr. Huo said, the middle-aged man immediately nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. Bring it. Look. Having said that, he stepped forward and put the test paper in front of Huo Lao. Electric field line. Huo Lao's eyes quickly saw the word, and he paused for a while in these two sentences, and then looked back. Then, he quickly fixed his gaze on another word, and said without raising his head, Isn't this zero damage? Are you having a problem with your brain? Ah. The middle-aged man was stunned, but Ayu showed a look of admiration. Did you see? Jia is the boss. Such a difficult question. Even the boss said it was beyond the outline. Huo Lao could get the answer at a glance. Be dumb. Huo Lao read the question again at this time, and confirmed that his answer came from the. Putting it back on the table, his temper clearly began to grow violent. You really don't understand. The middle-aged man shook his head, his face innocent. Then you were really stupid. I suggest you go back and read the book. I've been looking for this electric field line for a long time and haven't found it. I don't even have any internal information about our association. The middle-aged man defended himself. Idiot, these electric field lines have nothing to do with this subject. Huo Lao's voice increased by another point. How should it be calculated? Qingwei did not provide the value of Magikarp as physical defense. If it weren't for the electric field lines that affected Magikarp's own defense, it wouldn't be able to calculate it right. And this is the maximum damage value. Will it be 0? Quote, the middle-aged man asked. Stupid, I ask you, do you know the iron roller? No, it's a steel attribute physical skill. Now that you know this, do you know that if the iron roller wants to activate, it needs a condition, that is, when there must be a field on the field, the iron roller skill can be used successfully. Whether it's an electric field or a field with other attribute, there must be a field for the iron roller to cause damage. And it is clearly written in the title that after the electrical field disappears, Klinklang launches the iron roller skill to attack Magikarp. Quote, you said, can there be any harm in the end? The older Huo said, the louder he became. The middle-aged man was stunned. Iron roller is a skill that researchers discovered only 2 years ago, and it was first discovered in a very distant region. He just knew that this was a powerful steel-type move, and he didn't know all of its effect. Moreover, the middle-aged man admitted that he was bewitched by the electric field lines and the equipotential surface, which were completely incomprehensible. Who would have thought that these two high-level words are completely confusing things? Even this problem is not a calculation problem at all. It is a question that tests the trainer's understanding of the skill. The title of The Right Path. Although there are a lot of words, it seems that the title is very long, but the really useful are just a few words. When the electrical field disappears, that is, there is no skill effect of the field at this time. How much damage can the iron roller cause? Like other Go circular motion, Klinklang with 150 attack power, and Magikarp with unlimited physical strength, all of them are hilarious. And Ayu was also stunned. Originally, he thought that old Huo had all these things in mind, even if he didn't know what the electric field lines were, but he knew how Magikarp was affected, so he came to this result. I didn't expect the final result to sound so simple, and answer dumb. Well, but I can't seem to blame you all. Iron roller is not a common skill in Kanto, but this topic is quite interesting. Huo Lao's tone was a little lower at this time. He looked at the title, and then said with a little admiration, Qingwei, this little guy is smart. Since 180, he has created 2 very powerful words. Then use this to mislead the trainers so that their attention is focused on this, ignoring the skill effect of the iron roller. This is a very good question. I will use this question for this year's exam. At the same time, this question has also given me some inspiration. You can follow the format of this question and modify it a little bit, but it is not always the case. Isn't it an iron roller? It's the same to change some other more special skill. In this way, this question can also become a template, and the question bank will be expanded a lot. There's a reason why this little guy is really valued by the old guys in the alliance. Not to mention talent, just this brain. The more Huo Lao thought about it, the more admirable it became, and then he began to look down again. After all, this was the first question just now. Then he turned his attention to the second question. While looking at the title, he also muttered words, and soon he came to the answer blankly. After getting the answer, the admiration in his eyes became more profound. This second question can also be included in the question bank. Chapter 236 Comfort each other. Hearing Huo Lao's word, the middle-aged and Ayu were a little dumbfounded. Then the two of them began to think hard about what the second question was, but after thinking about it for a long time, they didn't think of it. They just glanced at it in a hurry before, and then put all their attention on the first calculation question, and didn't even read the other question. Huo Lao was looking at this test paper in admiration at this time, but he didn't notice the somewhat confused expressions of the two of them. Musharna's food preferences are the same as Kanto region and Johto region as Pokemon's food preferences. A Gengar, B Hypno, C Abra, D Noctowl. At this time, Huo Lao read out the second question. The two who heard the second question began to frown. They have heard of Musharna. It seems to be a psychic Pokemon from Unova region. Ayu doesn't know much. He just knows that this is a single psychic Pokemon, and he can barely guess some skill moves that the opponent can learn or possess. But what does Musharna eat? He really doesn't know. Wow. The middle-aged man knew a little more. After reading his memory bank, he vaguely remembered that Musharna looked like a Pokemon with a spherical contraction, and the overall appearance is a Pokemon with a light pink head and a lavender back, and it is said that he liked rest very much. And then he seems to have heard that Musharna is a kind of Pokemon with a very gentle temperament, and he is also a Pokemon of the psychic department, so he is liked by many people. Other than that, no. The middle-aged man tried his best to recall the few data in his mind. Although he is a middle-level cadre at the headquarters of the Nurturers Association, in fact, the most important thing is his strong business ability. For junior breeders, they only need to know most of the Pokemon in this region, not to mention the Pokemon from Unova. After all, this kind of Pokemon is too far away from them, so what if they know about it? If you have that time, you might as well get to know the Pokemon that is closer to you. After being quiet for about 3 minutes, Mr. Huo took advantage of this time to finish the little lunch that was left, put down the bowl and chopsticks and asked, "How is it? You know the answer comes. Are you dumbfounded?" Quote, Ayu and the middle-aged man have given up thinking about what Pokemon Musharna is at this time, but are looking at the 4 options, trying to find out the differences. These 4 options are very familiar to them at the headquarters of the Nurturing Association. After all, these are local Pokemon, and they are in contact with more on weekdays, and there were even a lot of topics about these Pokemon before. They are now trying to recall the preferences of these 4 Pokemon food. If they can find out what is different from the other 3 Pokemon, then even if they don't know what Musharna like to eat, they can also come to the answer dumbly. But after thinking about it for a long time, they still couldn't come up with an accurate answer. Dull. Because the food of these 4 Pokemons has some intersections with each other, and there are also gaps. Don't you know, Tilda? At this time, the old man's voice sounded again. Choose. See. The middle-aged and Ayu hesitantly gave their answers blankly. The answer came blankly exited. The two looked at each other. Just now, they didn't communicate with each other when they were thinking, but now they came up with the same answer. When they looked at each other, a slight smile appeared on Ayu's face. The boss knows more than I do. He chose Abra, so I may be wrong. And the observation ability of the middle-aged man must not be said. He immediately noticed the smile on Ayu's face. Does this kid know what Musharna like to eat? It seems that my estimate is correct. This is very good. I didn't expect this kid to know such a relatively unfamiliar topic. Then, the middle-aged man's heart dropped a little, and the two looked at Huolao together, as if they were 2 students waiting for the teacher to correct their homework. It's just that Huolao's face didn't show any expression, but continued. Choose C for both. Then tell me why. You come first, Huolao said, pointing to Ayu. Ayu, who was pointed out by Mr. Huo, had a confused look on his face. He was completely fooled by a god-level theorem. Choose C when something goes wrong. Would he dare to tell Mr. Huo about this reason? Cough cough. Ayu cleared his throat, then quietly glanced at the middle-aged man, and then he saw that the middle-aged man was slightly frowning, but he was obviously thinking. There was still a trace of confidence on his face. What does this mean? This shows that this answer comes. There should be nothing wrong with Duan, but let him think for 10,000 years and he can't come up with the answer. Dumbly, but Ayu thinks after thinking about it, he is a low-level clerk, and it is not a shame to say that he is covered. Although I have done the work of reviewing the topic before, but in that case, I can directly check the things that I can't encounter. Reporting Huolao, I was blinded. I only know that Musharna is a psychic Pokemon, so I thought it should be similar to the psychic Pokemon on Kanto SI, so I blinded one in the middle of BC. As soon as the words fell, Ayu noticed that the expression on the face of the middle-aged man beside him seemed to be a little wrong. Is that an expression like constipation? Since he can serve in the headquarters of the association, even if it is only a low-level staff member, Ayu still has basic judgment. At the moment, his heart throbbed. No. Huolao listened to Ayu's dull explanation that the answer came from the, and didn't say much, but looking at the middle-aged man, tell me about it. I quote, the middle-aged man now has a trace of cold sweat running down his forehead. He also smiled when he saw Ayu's face before, thinking that the other party knew that the real answer to this question came from that 9,802,585 sick. Just be dumb. It also gave him a lot of confidence. Although I was later asked by Huolao to explain why I chose it. If the answer came, I would explain it if I chose the right one. I don't think it's a big problem either. Especially Huolao also designated Ayu to answer first, which made him even happier. He has a reference answer from that 980,258.56. Dumbly, just copy and modify it a little bit. But the other party's answer was, Mang, are you kidding me? As soon as Ayu's explanation came out, his face changed immediately, but now that Huolao has looked over, he can only bite the bullet. I also just speculate. As far as I know, Musharna this kind of Pokemon seems to be a Pokemon that likes rest very much, and Abra also needs to sleep more than 18 hours a day due to its frequent overuse of psychic. Quote, Gengar is a very spiritual Pokemon. After all, they like to play pranks the most. From this, it can be seen that Gengar should be an energetic Pokemon. Although Hypno is also a psychic Pokemon, his work and rest are more normal, and the Pokemon like Noctowl, although they are not in good spirits during the day, are also energetic Pokemon at night. So only Abra and Musharna are the most similar in this regard, and both of them happen to be psychic Pokemon. So I speculate whether the two sides have many other similar things in common, such as living habits like eating similar food. The middle-aged man bit the bullet and explained. After he finished speaking, he turned to look at old Huo. Although he was expecting old man Huo to nod his head and say, completely correct, looking at old man Huo's expression now, he should have a problem with his answer. Huo Lao did not answer whether it was correct for the first time, but began to comment. Of course he had nothing to say about Ayu. The other party admitted that he was deceived, and it was normal for him to not know the identity of the other party. Although he was a little disappointed, he still didn't say anything. For middle-aged people, although your speculation sounds reasonable, it seems that when we discover a new Pokemon, we will use this method when we speculate on the skills after determining its attribute system. Huo Lao nodded first. Could it be? My idea is really correct. There was a little excitement in the middle-aged man's heart. If he can answer this correctly, he is really lucky and strong, good money, and his strength is bursting. However, what Huo Lao said next made the middle-aged man's heart sink completely. However, this speculative method is completely unworkable when used in other aspects of Pokemon, especially in terms of living habit. Huo Lao said, looking at the two people standing opposite. Each type of Pokemon, its living habit, although there are reasons for Pokemon itself, but more will be affected by its living environment. The typical ones are those Pokemon that have undergone regional changes, and their living habits are similar to those of our Pokemon. A big difference. So, when speculating about what a Pokemon like, it's more about where the Pokemon live, what the place produces, or what's in the environment. Musharna should be a Pokemon from Unova region, although there are some differences from our side, but many things are still similar, right? The middle-aged man couldn't help asking. Of course, although Unova is far away, it has a lot in common with us. It is impossible to speculate from this aspect, but don't you forget what it is. Coincidence, Huo Lao said slowly. This is. The middle-aged man was dumbfounded. If he knew what it was, why would he answer like that? Chapter 237 are candidates who don't know anything eligible to get point. This is a question. An exam question. Speaking of which, Huo Lao's tone suddenly improved a lot. Since it is a title, and there is no comment in the title, the person who asked the question will definitely take into account the situation that some people don't know about this kind of Pokemon. Although knowing about Pokemon is also a test for the examiner, but in case they don't understand it, the question maker will let the examiner try to guess from another direction, or guess. Huo Lao's words made Ayu and the middle-aged man, who were listening intently, even more confused. Co-authoring this truth, Qingwei also left a channel for this kind of speculation, but they didn't find out, and they're the ones in charge of the Pokemon identification exam question. Isn't this slapping them in the face? Now the two only feel pain in their faces. Huo Lao obviously didn't notice the state of the two at this time. Huo Lao has now entered the class mode, and Qingwei's question is about Pokemon's favorite food, and the Pokemon in the question is still a Pokemon from Musharna in Unova region. In this case, Qingwei didn't give Musharna's favorite food note. That's just one case. That the food that Musharna delights in is a very special kind of food, not the same common food here in Unova region and Kanto. On this account, Gengar's food is mixed, and his favorite is life energy. Hypno's favorite is dream eater. Whether it's Pokemon or human dream, it's their favorite food. Abra's food is some high energy food, such as advanced Pokeblocks and some tree fruit, which they eat regularly. Noctowl's food is also more mixed, but its favorite is some popular food. So, do you have a choice? Huo Lao told the four Pokemon's favorite food, and then continued to ask. That pick B. Ayu and the middle-aged man asked tentatively. Hearing this, Mr. Huo continued to ask, why not choose Gengar? Because life energy is generally preferred by ghost Pokemon. Musharna is a psychic Pokemon. The middle-aged man replied. Huo Lao nodded. It seems that you are still saved. At least you know the attributes of Musharna, and you know that life energy is the food that ghost-type Pokemon like. And this question has other confound. Although Gengar likes life energy, he also eats Pokeblocks and Dream Eater of the ghost type. And Noctowl can also learn Dream Eater. This can also be explained from the side. Noctowl can also feed on Dream. Abra is a psychic Pokemon like Musharna, and both love rest. Quote, these are all the delusions of this question. Of course, if you know Musharna's favorite food, you can directly choose the correct answer. 98,025,856 But if you don't know, you have to think a lot. That's why I said that Qingwei's topic is quite good. He has considered all aspects. Speaking of this, Huo Laosai once again showed an expression of admiration. It's just that Ayu's words at this time made him change his face immediately. Then, what if the candidate don't know these things? If the candidate don't know that Musharna is a psychic Pokemon, or that life energy is me that the ghost Pokemon like, wouldn't they be unable to choose? Huo Lao hearing this, anger appeared on his face. If you are a candidate, you don't know this, you don't know, and you don't know anything, then why should you do it right? Is it possible that the exam is for him to be right? He doesn't know anything. Is he qualified? This is an exam. It's a place to test your ability and knowledge. It's not a place for for you to go back to BJEA home with your high scores to show your parent. Huo Lao's remarks made Ayu react. Yes, this is a Pokemon identification test. You don't know anything. Why are you thinking about doing the right thing? That's why I said the question of Qingwei. If you directly understand the habits of these Pokemon, you can get the correct answer in 1 second. From the dumb, Huo Lao suppressed his anger and continued. If you only know that Musharna is a psychic Pokemon, and you are familiar with the 4 Pokemons in the option, then you can pass this. Problem-solving ideas can also choose the correct answer. Dull. Just need to think for a while. If it is completely without knowing Musharna, you can also rule out the 2 wrong options C and D, and there is a 50% chance of getting one between A, B. Quote, if you don't have such a problem-solving idea, if you know the attributes of Musharna, you can choose one of the 2 BCs with a 50% correct rate. If you don't have a problem-solving idea and don't know the properties of Musharna, you can find out that all 3 Pokemon in the options will feed on Dream. If you choose one of the 3, you will have a 33% correct rate. If nothing understood, then the examinee is not worthy of scoring on this question. The 25% chance is high enough. This is still Qingwei's mercy. If it were me, I would just add 2 more interference options. Choose 1 out of 6 and reduce the chance of being right. Ayu lowered his head and dared not look at Huo Lao. I can't stand the wise question that I just asked in my head. The middle-aged people are also complaining in their heart. This Nima has just chosen one of the 2 BC candidates. He is the second candidate in the mouth of Huo Lao, but his luck is not good and they are wrong. But Huo Lao's words made them realize, although this question looks simple, it clearly divides the candidates into several categories. The more you know, the greater the probability of being able to choose the right one, and vice versa. If an old fritters with a question such as Huo Lao, it is normal to ask such a question. But how old is Qingwei? Not to mention that there have been no problems at all before. From Fiction Group 9 euros 802 0 feet 5.85 feet 6 1 by 1 daily update 1 by 1. If it was a middle-aged man himself, it is estimated that the options would become a question of 1 correct option plus 3 random options. As for the other, plus 1 interference item is the most. As for the other 2 options also bring the meaning of interference. He never thought about it. And Huo Lao continued to pick up the topic and read it after ruthlessly complaining about the 2 of them, and he was still muttering plausibly while watching. Chapter 238 to die together is the best. Well, Qingwei is a good guy. This question, although it involves Pokemon from the 2 regions that are not Kanto Johto, it can be chosen. This is another topic that is biased towards trainers. It seems to be not bad. This, so it is. Although the title is very delicate, this one is really out of line. This is not bad. It's a topic for cultivators. Choose. Electric rat. I'm good at this. The middle-aged man and Ayu listened to what Huo Lao said in his mouth. Ayu was stunned when he heard it. How many questions has Mr. Huo selected? Usually, every senior cultivator needs to provide at least 10 questions, but in the end, after screening, removing duplicates and inappropriate questions, the questions that can finally be selected in the question bank are on average 4 or 5 or 6. And now, as for middle-aged people, what's more in their minds is Qingwei's mind so terrifying. So this is the show of Qingwei genius. The middle-aged man suddenly felt a little shudder. His understanding of Qingwei is much more than that of Ayu. It's not that he doesn't know what Qingwei has done. Qingwei discovered the fairy system. Like many people, he thinks that although Qingwei is a genius, there are mainly accidental reasons. If it wasn't for Eevee's accidental evolution, Qingwei might not have been able to discover the existence of the fairy system. As for the exhibition match with Land Crossing Elite and the challenge match that was broadcast live on TV, he was a pretty good trainer back then, but he has been working for the Breeders' Association for so many years. As a trainer, the level of combat has dropped a lot, but on the contrary, he is also fascinated by these cultivators all day long, and his eyesight on Pokemon's observation has improved a lot. Similarly, the vision of being a trainer before has not deteriorated too much. Therefore, in his opinion at the time, the exhibition match between Qingwei and Lance Crossing Elite was because the Pokemon that Lance used at the time was simply defeated by Qingwei's fairy Pokemon, and there was no way to do it. However, from the challenges that followed, it could still be seen that Qingwei's strength at that time was already very good. As for the potential, of course, it was much higher than that of him back then. As for the specific height, if he can tell, then he is definitely not the one sitting in this seat now. As for Qingwei as a cultivator, the youngest mid-level cultivator would be extremely shocked if outsiders knew about it, but middle-aged people felt it was quite normal. After all, although Qingwei has talent, in his opinion, if Qingwei's parents were not 2 senior cultivators, Qingwei might not be able to get to this point. Parents with 2 senior nurturers, as long as the child has some related talent, the ultimate achievement in nurturers will not be much worse. But now, middle-aged people feel that their 3 views are about to be shattered by Qingwei. After Huo Lao said these topics, topic. No matter how stupid he is, he can see it. You must know that although this question sounds simple, it represents the person's own knowledge reserve, and these questions he can't do the first two. This already means that Qingwei's own knowledge of Pokemon and skill moves has completely surpassed him. And how old is Qingwei? Under 16 years old. It took people less than 16 years to surpass him, who has been gone for more than 30 years. And it's not in one aspect, but surpasses him in all aspects. Thinking of these, the middle-aged people are a little autistic. Old Huo didn't notice the changing expressions on the faces of the two. At this time, he was concentrating on the problem. Although Qingwei's topic has set up many small traps, it is not a big problem for him. Soon, he read all the questions, then walked to the desk with the test paper, picked up the pen and sketched on it for a while. Here, the questions that I have checked above can be selected into this question bank, and the questions marked with asterisk can be directly put on this year's test paper. As for the questions that are not marked, they are all questions that I think are out of line. Don't worry about it for now. Okay. The middle-aged person hurriedly took the test paper, glanced at it, and found that there are only 2 unmarked topics, and there are 5 questions marked with asterisk. Like the first and second lanes are marked with asterisk, the remaining 6 questions are all tick questions. But Huo Lao just marked the title, but did not give his answer at the back of the title dumbly. The middle-aged man simply looked at these questions, and found that he could choose the correct answer as soon as possible. There is only one topic to stay. The middle-aged man only felt a blush on his face. Why don't you go? I'm going to start my research. Huo Lao took a sip of water, and after simply cleaning up the table, he found that the two were still standing still and didn't leave. So he spoke out and started chasing people. You didn't put the answer from the dumbly. Did you write it down by the way? Hearing old Huo's voice, the middle-aged man hesitated and asked aloud. Huo Lao raised his head and glanced at him. The answer to this question comes dumbly. Do it yourself if you don't know. Go to Qingwei and ask for advice. What? Do you feel embarrassed to ask a child for advice? After speaking, Mr. Huo opened a door next to the office leading to the research room, and then closed the door heavily. Just ignore these 2 people. Boss, Seeing that Huo Lao was gone, Ayu opened his mouth cautiously. Come on, go back. The middle-aged man put away the test papers and walked out of Huo Lao's office with Ayu. As soon as he left the office, he threw the test paper in his hand to Ayu's hand. Have you heard what Mr. Huo said just now? Take this test paper back, do it yourself, and get the correct answer after being dazed. Enter it into the question bank together with the question. Boss, I don't know how. Stupid. If you can't, ask your colleagues in the office. If you still can't, contact Qingwei directly to ask them for advice. Could it be that you have forgotten what Huo Lao said just now? Okay, I don't ask you, I did it today. Now it's off work. You can take it home and have a look. After the middle-aged man finished speaking, he left quickly without waiting for Ayu to say anything. As he walked, the middle-aged man was still rejoicing. Fortunately, he still had a younger brother, and he didn't reveal that he wouldn't do these things. Right, I leave this terrifying topic to the younger brothers to do, and ask the younger brothers for advice. I just need to wait for the younger brothers to come up with the correct answer from that 98,025,856. Dumbly enter it into the question bank to have a look and study. Beg for flowers. 0 inches. I'm so witty. The middle-aged man thought as he walked. Ayu didn't expect that he would actually throw the pot on himself. I have to work overtime again when I go home today. Ayu sighed silently, and returned to the office with the test paper, ready to pack up and take the test paper to go home to do the question. Ayu, who came home, started to do the quiz after eating. At first, what he thought was to use the kind of problem-solving ideas that Mr. Huo said today to do it himself. So, half an hour later, Ayu still couldn't help turning on the computer, because for almost every question on the test paper, he had to check the information to get the answer dull. Most of these questions test your knowledge of Pokemon, and the angles are tricky, although most of them are Pokemon from the 2 regions of Kanto and Johto, which makes him feel very familiar. But if he doesn't check the information, he can't do it at all. Finally, 40 minutes later, he put down the mouse and breathed a sigh of relief. Not counting the 2 questions, which were answered blankly at the beginning, there are a total of 9 questions left, although it is extremely difficult to do. But after finishing it, Ayu suddenly found that his understanding of the Pokemon mentioned in these topics has improved a lot. He even felt that his knowledge had expanded a lot. Ayu marked the answer he got from on the paper, but he hesitated for a while, or sent an email to Qingwei through the computer, the content of which is to euphemistically propose the answer stay problem. Then, it didn't take long for him to receive an email from Qingwei. Opening it up, Ayu found that Qingwei not only replied to every question, but the answer to each question came blankly, and even simply marked the reason why the answer came. Then at the end of the email, Qingwei politely expressed his embarrassment because he forgot to put the answer dumbly sent together. All right. Ayu's answer came from the after being stunned. He couldn't help clenching his fist and waving it in the air. However, it didn't take long for his waving movements to stop suddenly, because he remembered it took him a long time to do these topics, and they have also checked a lot of data to make the topic. If this is an exam, then his final score is 0 point, and these questions are for trainers who take the Pokemon identification test. Is that what I do? Ayu felt a little down, but soon he laughed happily again. It took me a long time to check the information to get everything right. I don't know what the trainers will do when they see such a question in the exam. Quote, you can't look up information like me during the exam. Hehehe. Ayu has already begun to fantasize about the ashen faces on the faces of the candidates who walked out of the exam room after the exam. This year's average is definitely much lower. Even those trainers who have drifted over the line in previous years may be given away for nothing this year. He can't wait to see this scene. Towel. Chapter 239 _ the wrong switch was flipped. Ayu soon remembered that this was still the result of the selection of 5 questions. If the time comes when the questions are drawn from the question bank, and a few more questions are selected, then the picture during the test will be even more beautiful. Oak Institute. Qingwei was feeding the Pokemons in the backyard at this time. In the afternoon, there were no new challengers at Viridian Gym, so he had nothing to do after finishing the problem. So he get off work early, sitting in Dragonite and rushing fast. I went back to the institute in Professor Oak, so dinner time was a little earlier than the previous 2 days. It's just that he just received an email from the Nurturers Association to him. When he saw that the answer to the question came, he realized that he only asked the question in the afternoon sent over. At this time, he didn't know yet that he casually came up with the topic 183 inches, but it caused such a big trouble to the 2 people in the association headquarters. After all, in his opinion, these questions are actually very basic questions. Compared with the test papers he has done in his previous life, they are simply insignificant, and there is no comparison with this book. It's just that he forgot. In his previous life, Blue Star, who had a serious involution, had lived for so many years. Those questions in the previous life exams were of an order of magnitude higher than the questions in the Pokemon world. A math multiple choice question. The 4 answers are similar in pairs, or simply each answer is from the novel. The group may be just 1 digit after the decimal point. As long as the calculation is slightly wrong, the final result is exactly another answer comes due on. English title. Various synonym. Homophone. Similar words of the words in the option. The topic of physics. I came up to give you 2 paragraphs, but most of the results are nonsense for introduction. Just reading will waste some time. Therefore, Qingwei also subconsciously used this when he came up with the question. A method of interference, such as electric field lines and the like. Of course, he knew that there was no concept of electric field lines in the slightly deformed Pokemon world, but since it was something that people wasted time reading, it had to be made a little taller. Anyway, these things have no practical effect. Even if Qingwei casually talks about time relativity, there is no problem. It's just that he hasn't realized that there is no such person in this world. Most of the questions in the Pokemon world are relatively upright type. In other words, there are very few confusing options, and there are no confusing sentences in the expression of the sentences in the question. The question maker in the Pokemon world will not make some intrusive essays on the topic. I hope that one of the questions I will choose will be included in the exam, Qingwei thought while watching the Pokemon eating on. After all, this is the first time he has been regarded as the author of the question, and he still has a strong sense of freshness. In the previous life, he was a tool for doing questions when he was in school, and he has never been exposed to this aspect since he came to the Pokemon world. After all, compared to the previous life, the children of this world are simply not too comfortable in his opinion, so he really hoped to let more people do the questions he asked, and at the same time see the reactions of others. Yo tilde. At this moment, little Larvitar passed Qingwei holding a piece of Pokeblock. Qingwei looked at the happy little Larvitar, and suddenly his eyes lit up. Larvitar, wait, yo, would you like to eat more Pokemon? Qingwei asked in a captivated tone. Yo. Little Larvitar was stunned for a moment. His eyes suddenly lit up, and his little head lit up quickly. Of course he would be happy to eat more delicious food. Then wait. Qingwei quickly stood up and ran towards the research institute, leaving behind little Larvitar who was holding Pokeblocks with a bewildered face. Yo, is this going to get Pokemon candy? Back to Qingwei in the research institute. He found a pen and paper to write a 9-9 multiplication table on it, and then wrote some questions on another piece of paper. So, he returned to the backyard with a pen and paper, and spread these 2 pieces of paper in front of little Larvitar. This is the 9-9 multiplication table. You take it to study first, and then do this test paper. If I pass in the end, all. Qingwei said while taking out 10 whole Pokemon candies from his pocket. If you pass, these 10 Pokemon candies are yours. If your final score is over 80, add 5 more. If you can get over 90 points, add $10. Qingwei is not worried that little Larvitar can't learn this simple 9-9 multiplication table. You know, Pokemons are very smart. As long as they are consciously cultivated, even Even Pokemon who often come into contact with humans can basically recognize human writing, although it will be difficult for them to write with their claws. But if you just write some numbers, or do some multiple choice questions, it's relatively easy for Pokemon. Yo, when little Larvitar heard Chingwei say this, he couldn't even eat the Pokeblocks in his hand. I saw him put the Pokeblocks on the ground, then sat down and started counting with his fingers. Soon, the image of 20 Pokemon candies appeared in his mind, and little Larvitar's eyes brightened. Even the corners of his mouth began to drool unconsciously. Yo, then, he nodded frantically towards Chingwei. Isn't it just a multiplication table? Study is over. Okay, then I'll teach you the multiplication table, and then I'll teach you how to do multiplication. Chingwei said, sat down directly, took the multiplication table and started teaching to little Larvitar. And this scene was also seen by many other Pokemon, especially Dragonite. After hearing what Chingwei said that he could eat so many Pokemon candies just by doing a single question, he directly came over to 4.0. With Dragonite taking the lead, Chingwei's other Pokemon also came over. It didn't take long for Chingwei to be surrounded by Pokemon. After more than an hour, Chingwei put down the pen and paper. How is it? Have you learned it? Yo tilde. Little Larvitar nodded and patted his chest confidently. He has already memorized the 99 multiplication table perfectly, and after Chingwei taught him how to calculate multiplication, he also answered many of the questions that Chingwei asked when teaching. Now his self-confidence is abnormally inflated. These 20 quick Pokemon candies will soon belong to Ben Larvitar. Then you start doing this test paper. Chapter 240 Learn to make Pokemon happy. Seeing the confident look of little Larvitar, Chingwei put his test paper in front of Larvitar. Little Larvitar immediately looked at the test paper, and the other Pokemons also listened to the lesson for more than an hour. Although Chingwei just gave Larvitar a lesson, his voice was not small, and the surrounding Pokemon could hear it clearly. So, at this time, basically all the Pokemon who attended the class have learned about the same. So, Dragonite took advantage of the fact that little Larvitar started to do the question, and approached Chingwei. Boom. Huh, you're going to do the quiz too. Want some Pokemon? Chingwei asked. Boom. Dragonite nodded again and again. Not just Dragonite, other Pokemon such as Charizard, Little Mischievous, Squirtle and these foodies are all nodding. Even Sylveon, Blossom, Azumarill, who are usually very stable Pokemon, are a little moved. After all it takes is a pass to get a full 10 Pokemon. The higher the score, the more generous the final reward. Only Ralt, a Pokemon, behaves without movement. Ralts was sitting on Chingwei's shoulders, shaking his leg, and looking at the other Pokemon. Of course, she also studied Chingwei's course just now, and since she is still a Pokemon of the psychic department, she is born with the ability of telepathy, so she can learn human knowledge faster. It can be said that she now understands more and more profoundly than little Larvitar, and the reason why she is not moved is also very simple. One is that she is not a foodie, and the second is that, due to her innate ability to sense ECG-19, she can feel the emotions of human beings. Although she is still small, she can also vaguely perceive Chingwei when she is saying the question, but there is a feeling of gloating in the heart. It feels as if Chingwei is waiting to see a good show. Therefore, even though she is still young, she is still keenly aware that such a rich reward that Chingwei said is not so easy to get. Lalu tilde. Ralts let out a low voice, and at the same time reached out his small hand and gently tugged at Chingwei's ear. At the same time, Ralt's voice also sounded in Chingwei's mind. Do you have any other thought? Why do I feel? Lalu. Ralts was halfway through when he saw Chingwei turn his head and put the index finger of his right hand to his lip. Lalu tilde. In an instant, Ralt understood, so she didn't ask any more questions, but together with Chingwei, she also had the same mentality of watching a good show. Boom. At this time, Dragonite's voice rang again, and Chingwei started talking to Ralts on his shoulder without answering the question just after he asked. If you want to do the question, you can do it. Now go to the institute and get some paper and I will give you the question. Chingwei thought about it, but agreed. To be honest, he was a little hesitant about Dragonite's request at first. After all, Dragonite is a Pokemon belonging to professional oak, and he has already eaten so fat now. Plus, little Larvitar is rather naive now, and these questions can stump him. But Dragonite is an old Pokemon that has lived for decades. This guy is more shrewd than the silly little Larvitar. I didn't see that when he played little Larvitar before. He almost exploded little Larvitar's lungs. Something as simple as a multiplication operation shouldn't cause any difficulty for Dragonite. But multiplication is just for today. After all, Chingwei was also inspired by today's question, and he didn't have much time, so it would be good to come up with a multiplication operation. But when there is time in the gym tomorrow after training, Chingwei has a lot of time to think about what type of teaching to do next. There are so many things in mathematics, isn't it a matter of minutes to get a Dragonite? What's more, the Pokemon world also has a lot of math textbooks. Chingwei only needs to buy some textbook for them to learn by themselves, and then start to create questions according to their learning content, and that's it. Boom tilde. When Dragonite heard it, he waved his little wings and rushed into the research institute to find the paper. And seeing Dragonite's request was so easy to succeed, Charizard, Squirtle, and Little Mischievous also got together and began to communicate with Chingwei as well. In response, Chingwei of course agreed all at once. He also gave a question for 1 Pokemon, and also gave a question for 10. Moreover, this kind of question is not easy to give 100 or 80 questions, and there is no technical content at all. As for the more stable Pokemons like Sylveon, because they have been with Chingwei for a long time, they also vaguely noticed that something was not right at this time. Although Chingwei treats them very well on weekdays, as for the food, he will not gimp on food, and he will not care if he eats more Chingwei occasionally. But don't know why, they always don't feel right today. So, these few Pokemons are going to wait and see what happens, and see the edge of the sea first to see the situation of the little Larvitar and Dragonite. Little Larvitar has already started looking at the title on the paper. 9*8 equals 6*3 equals yo tilde. The first dozen questions are all very basic multiplication questions. Little Larvitar, who has just memorized the multiplication table, did it very quickly. While doing it in his mind, he counted how many he had done. There are 50 questions in total, and he only needs to do 30 questions correctly to get the guaranteed 10 pieces of Pokemon. And now, halfway to that goal. Soon, Little Larvitar completed 20 questions. The first 15 questions are directly on the multiplication table, which is not difficult for him, while the last 5 questions are separated from the multiplication table. But for him, Chingwei also told him when he was teaching, and it was not very difficult. However, starting from 21 questions, the difficulty increases slightly. Little Larvitar had to use the ground as scratch paper, sitting on the ground and constantly scratching the ground with his claws to make calculation. Boom tilde. At this moment, a massive yellow light flashed past Little Larvitar. Dragonite made an emergency stop and stopped in front of Chingwei. However, the air current he had set off in the agility just now made the little Larvitar who was sitting on the ground turn his head and fell straight down. And the problem that little Larvitar was calculating was also destroyed by his unconscious grip when he turned somersault. Yo! The little Larvitar, who got up, saw that he had finally done half of the calculation draft, but it was destroyed. He immediately roared, and picked up a stone and smashed it at Dragonite. At this time, Dragonite was placing a stack of thick white paper in front of Chingwei. There was a stone flying behind him. He didn't care at all, and with a slight flick of his tail, the stone was swept away. Boom tilde. Quick question. Dragonite called urgently. Don't worry, you can wait by the side for a while. The problem will be solved soon. Chingwei waved his hand and told the Pokemon surrounding him not to watch him answer the question. So, a circle of Pokemon scattered. Each found a place to watch Chingwei solve the problem. And little Larvitar, when he saw that the stone he threw didn't pose any threat to Dragonite, he also realized that he was no match for this abominable fat boy at all. What's more, the more important thing now is not to teach the fat boy, but to finish these problems. Now the problems he has done have reached the level of dozens by dozen. Although the difficulty has risen a lot, little Larvitar can still handle it. Just after he worked hard to finish the 25 questions, when he looked at the 26th question, 2659*8543 equals 183. Yo, how does this make me do? Is the difficulty mentioned so high? Little Larvitar suddenly got a question mark on his forehead, and then he looked down at the question below. Yo, so, little Larvitar, he realized, because, compared to the questions below, especially from the 31st question onward, this 4-digit by 4-digit question is nothing short of pediatric. Especially in the title after 40, that long string of numbers, if he didn't count it carefully, he wouldn't know how many digits it was. Asterisk 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 equal. Chingwei made it clear that he didn't want him to get the highest level of reward. It's obvious that he is bullying him for his young age. He couldn't believe that anyone could make such a question. Little Larvitar was suddenly discouraged. He was also exposed to these multiplication operations for the first time today. No matter how smart he was, the difficulty of doing such a long series of operations could be imagined. It's basically the same as asking a first-grade student to do these problems. Yo tilde. However, little Larvitar still remembers that as long as he can answer 30 questions correctly, he can get a guarantee. And for him, the questions before 30 need to be drafted for calculation, but if there is no accident, he can still get the answer dumbly. He has to be more careful next time. Otherwise, among the problems that he can handle now, in case he misses one or two things because of his own carelessness, if you want to deal with such a difficult thing in the back, you will have to double the difficulty. Boom tilde. Yo. Just as little Larvitar was sitting on the ground and preparing to continue doing the quiz, the voice of Dragonite suddenly came from behind him. He turned his head and found that Dragonite was not far behind him, stretching his neck, peeking at his test paper. Yo. Chapter 241 1_, are you discriminating? At this time, Qingwei was posing a question to them, and Dragonite and others were doing nothing, so they quietly leaned behind little Larvitar to take a peek. One is to find a chance to laugh at little Larvitar. After all, he just threw a stone in his back. Although the stone was nothing to him at all, if this revenge had a chance, he would still have to avenge it. Second, Dragonite wanted to sneak a look at the exam papers. After all, these are all questions from Qingwei. Now, if you take a sneak peek at it, you can also understand how difficult the questions Qingwei is asking, so that you can have some idea in your heart. But when he saw the topics that were very simple for him at the beginning, he unconsciously cried out because he was too happy. If Qingwei is at this level, then today, as 20 Pokemon he's got the candy. Then, he was ready to look down again. However, he saw that little Larvitar had moved his body at this time, facing him with his butt, letting his body block all the test papers. When little Larvitar noticed Dragonite peeking behind him, of course he was angry at first, thinking that Dragonite would laugh at him. But he is not a fool after all. And then he reacted. Dragonite, the cunning fat boy, wanted to peek at the title, so how could he possibly be as Dragonite wanted? So he directly blocked the subject with his body, and at the same time pointed his butt at Dragonite in mockery. Dragonite saw the scene, and did not go around to continue watching. After all, there was not much movement on their side just now, and Qingwei didn't notice the appearance here. If he went around in circles, if Qingwei noticed and gave him a repentance, then his snacks would not be complete. Gone. Moreover, even if it was just a glimpse, although I didn't see the specific topic, I also saw the generalization of those topics in the first half. At the beginning, the questions can be done without moving your mind, and in the middle, it seems to be 3-digit and 4-digit questions, although it is a little difficult. But Dragonite simulated it in his mind, and it was relatively easy for him to deal with it. Dragonite estimated based on these 30 questions. According to this gradient of difficulty, the latter questions will not be too difficult. In this case, Dragonite felt more relieved, and then he quietly glanced at Qingwei again, and found that he was still concentrating on writing questions on the paper, so he calmed down and walked to the side quietly. But what he didn't know was, Qingwei is indeed focusing on the problem, but Ralts on his shoulder doesn't want to keep looking at this seemingly annoying problem. Coupled with Ralts' own sensing ability, as long as someone is watching her, she can feel it. And Dragonite just peeked at Qingwei more than once before peeking at little Larvitar, so everything Dragonite just did was seen by Ralts. So, Lalu, I want to report. Dragonite is peeking at Larvitar, as topic. Close black lens bracket. Ralts' voice suddenly sounded in Qingwei's heart. So, he paused lightly when he was writing, looked at the paper on which most of the topics were written, and calmly placed the paper at the bottom of the stack of papers. Then start to continue to give questions on a piece of white paper. 1 *** 5454812 equal. For the first question, Qingwei let go of himself and wrote a series of numbers at random, and each question after that is longer than the previous one. Lalu tilde. Everything Qingwei did was seen by Ralts. As a result, Ralts felt a little sympathy for Dragonite because it was pressed on the bottom piece of paper, and the questions at the back were not mentioned. The questions at the front were basically 2-digit and 3-digit questions, and now, it has directly become the ultimate body. Even what Qingwei wrote later was not just multiplying two numbers, but multiplying several together. That length, it is simply too long to be seen by people. After not considering the difficulty, Qingwei's questioning speed is of course much faster. At first, he thought that it was similar to little Larvitar. Although the initial problem was a little more difficult than what Larvitar did, it was still very simple, and it was like giving away points for nothing. But since Dragonite cheated, don't blame him for writing a few more numbers with shaking hand. Well, anyway, it's just a few more numbers, so it's not a big problem, is it? Soon, Dragonite's test paper was finished. Dragonite, your test paper. Qingwei picked up the paper full of numbers and waved it towards Dragonite. Boom tilde. Dragonite moved quickly and took the test paper with a pause. When he went back and looked down, he was immediately dumbfounded. Boo, what about the topic that was given for free at the beginning? What kind of monsters are these? Just looking at the string of numbers gave Dragonite a headache. P4F. Boom. Qingwei, you are targeting Benlong. At that time, Dragonite's claws tried to rip the test paper to waste paper, but the look and taste of Pokemon candies suddenly appeared in his mind. So, the strength of his claws grasping the paper also decreased a lot involuntarily. Although these questions are difficult, but if he spends more time and calculate carefully, he can still get the answer. Stay here. Boom. Benlong endured for delicious Pokemon candy. On Qingwei's side, after handing over the test paper to Dragonite, after thinking about it, he took out the half-marked test paper at the bottom. Then I started to write and draw on it, with Money Jiao. Although this paper is not for Dragonite anymore, but the difficulty is slightly reduced later, it would be good to give it to Charizard to do it. Just as Qingwei continued to work hard to come up with questions, little Larvitar was in trouble. Little Larvitar stared at the test paper in front of him. He had already made 38 questions on it, and the difficulty of the latter questions was too great for him. Secondly, at his current age, he is in a hyperactive period. Let him stay here quietly for a long time and concentrate on doing the question for him. Gong. Now he feels a little tortured. So, little Larvitar thought about it carefully, and now he has done 38 questions. Although he can't guarantee all the correct answers, in his opinion, it should be no problem to get a passing score. It is a little difficult for him to get 80 points. So, chapter 242 you have today too. Little Larvitar calculated the account by himself. If he continued to work hard on the 10 questions, the time required for these 10 questions would be more than the time he spent on the previous questions combined. I don't know how much, and the fault tolerance rate given to him is much lower than it is now. Once he can't get 80 points, it means that so much time is wasted, and he can't sit still now. Even if you get 80 points, the reward is just an additional 5 Pokemon candy. For him, this seems to be a little not worth it. Yo tilde. Little Larvitar thought about it. Isn't it just 5 more Pokemon candy? If you want to eat in the future, it's a big deal, and you can ask Chingwei to take the initiative to ask for the question, and as long as you pass, there will be $10. Plan pass. So, little Larvitar walked towards Chingwei with the test paper, ready to hand in the test paper. Chingwei had just given Charizard and Little Mischievous questions to these 2 Pokemon, and was now preparing to start writing questions for Squirtle. Seeing little Larvitar coming over with the test paper, Chingwei asked while answering the question, "It's all done so fast." Yo tilde. Larvitar stepped forward and put the test paper beside Chingwei. Chingwei glanced down and found that this little guy really only did the previous problems, and he did not do any of the problems that he raised a lot of difficulty later. You go play first, and I'll mark your paper after I've written the questions for Squirtle. Chingwei said something casually and continued to write the title on the paper. Yo. Little Larvitar nodded, put down the test paper 187, and pressed it with a stone to prevent the wind from blowing the test paper away, and then hopped and ran outside. Halfway through the run, he suddenly noticed a Dragonite who was lying on the ground not far away, gesturing with his claws on the ground. Yo. Suddenly, little Larvitar's eyes lit up. No, the chance for revenge seems to be coming. You know, he is now planning to continue to do the questions and ask Chingwei to eat candy. If he peeked for a while like Dragonite just now, wouldn't he be able to know Chingwei's problem? Even if it's not the same as the one he did just now, it's safe to say that Chingwei will come up with the same question in the future, and it just so happens that he can peep at Dragonite's answer from the dumb. Won't it be much easier to do it yourself? So, little Larvitar walked to Dragonite's side with short leg, and then quietly looked at Dragonite's test paper while Dragonite was doing calculations on the ground. Just a glance, little Larvitar was done. The difficulty of this special first question is already the same as the difficulty of the last few questions on his test paper. He couldn't remember such a long series of numbers at all. Then he looked down again, and was even more dizzy. After reading the questions that followed, he realized that the first question was simply a simple question that couldn't be simpler. Boom. At this time, Dragonite, who had just finished a calculation problem, looked up and saw that little Larvitar was reading his problem. Yo tilde. Little Larvitar also saw that Dragonite found him, but he didn't panic at all, but looked at him with a gloating look. If this topic is for him to do, let alone a guarantee, I will be thankful to be able to answer 10 questions. Boom. Dragonite looked at little Larvitar, and also remembered the little Larvitar's topic he had just read. Compared with his topic, it was at the level of pediatric. This Chingwei actually treats them differently. So, Dragonite stretched out its paw and pulled little Larvitar aside. Yo tilde tilde. However, the little Larvitar, who was pulled over by Dragonite and turned somersault, was not angry at all. Instead, his expression was even more gloating. In the end, he even covered his stomach with one hand and pointed at Dragonite with one finger and started laughing. Little Larvitar is in a very beautiful mood now. As long as Dragonite is more uncomfortable than him, then he is the one who earns blood. As for a few somersaults, what is that? Boom. Dragonite was so angry that he could only learn how little Larvitar looked like at the beginning, turned his back, and flicked his tail at the same time, causing little Larvitar to turn a few somersaults. Yo tilde tilde. But little Larvitar's laughter still came from behind him, which made him extremely annoyed. I can't even calm down and concentrate on the question. Fortunately, Chingwei's voice came over at this time. Larvitar, come here. I'm going to mark the exam paper for you. Yo tilde. Hearing Chingwei's cry, little Larvitar laughed at Dragonite again, and then ran towards Chingwei, and Dragonite finally regained its calm. On Chingwei's side, he had already handed over the last set of exam papers to Squirtle, and then began to mark the exam papers with little Larvitar. Although this paper was randomly produced by him in the Research Institute, the numbers on it were all written by him at will. However, Chingwei's current mental arithmetic ability is also very strong. In addition, the problems that little Larvitar did are relatively simple, and and those difficult problems were not done at all. Therefore, he can get the answers to these questions through mental arithmetic. The answers to these questions come dull. But even if this is not the case, he can also use the calculator function on Pokédex to calculate to know that the correct answer comes. It's still pretty simple. There were a total of 38 questions, and Qingwei quickly completed the correction, with 3 wrong and 35 correct. As a result, Qingwei wrote a score of 70 points on the header of the test paper. You end up scoring 70 over 60 but not 80, so you end up with 10 Pokemon. Qingwei took out a handful of Pokemon candy, counted 10 pieces, put them on the test paper, and handed the test paper and candy to the little Larvitar who was standing beside him. Yo tilde. Little Larvitar happily took the test paper. He had expected this result for a long time, so after he got the Pokemon candy, he didn't even say hello and ran to Dragonite with his thing. Boom. Dragonite, who was calculating, looked at the little thing that had just left and returned again, and his mood became irritated unconsciously. Glancing over there, he couldn't help it anymore, because the little guy sat right next to him, spread his test paper on the ground, and started eating Pokemon. Looking at the incredibly simple questions on the front of the paper, plus the Pokemon that little Larvitar put on the ground beside him, Dragonite just felt like he was taking decrit damage. Why is the world so unfair? At this time, not only Dragonite but also Charizard and Little Mischievous encountered some troubles. Although their problems are a lot less difficult than Dragonite's, they are still a lot harder than those done by Little Larvitar. After finishing the simple appetizers at the beginning, they had to carefully calculate the remaining topic. At first they all thought that they would get all the Pokemon candy, but now, one by one, they have changed their mind. With the gradual increase in the difficulty of the question, their goals have changed from all to 15 yuan, and now, it's good to get the bottom line. So, one by one, they adopted the same idea as the little Larvitar, and asked more than 30 questions, guaranteed 60 points. As for the latter, I'll talk about it later. In this way, these Pokemons also quickly finished the questions and went to Qingwei to start handing in the paper. And Dragonite, he was the second to get the test paper, and he was still working hard at this time. This does not mean that he has to do all the problem, but now he, in the invisible interference of little Larvitar, it made him unable to calm down and concentrate on the questions at all. In addition to his own questions, starting from the first question, he had to do meticulous calculations on the ground. Then, listening to Qingwei's voice when he was grading other Pokemon papers, his mood became even more irritable. Charizard, you're a 64, barely passing, and only get 10 Pokemon. Pooh, Little Mischievous, you slick, you only did 30 questions, 60 point, 10 pieces of Pokemon. Next time you can't only do so few questions. Don't charm is useless. I don't even know how to do it. Next time, if you only do a question on the passing line, then it will be dealt with as a fail. Well, Wordle, 78 point, not bad, worthy of praise. If you end up scoring the highest this time, I'll give you 10 more Pokemon, double the number of first place candy. Jenny, you said you wanted the sweet and sour one. Isn't that what Melodic like to eat? Jenny, okay, I'll give it to you if you want, but only if you have the highest score. Jenny, Wordle let out a cry, then looked at Dragonite with a trace of hatred in his eyes. Now, his score temporarily ranked first, but the only hidden danger is Dragonite. Once Dragonite's final score is higher than his, the Pokemon he used to please Melodic will slip out of his hands. So, Dragonite, who was trying to meditate on the question, felt that someone was watching him behind him. At his current level of strength, even if it's not a psychic-type Pokemon, he doesn't have such a powerful perception ability, but the perception improvement brought by his strength has actually surpassed many psychic-type Pokemon. Especially now, from the feeling coming from behind, he can even feel the eyes staring at him. In addition to hatred, there is also a trace of tension.